Welcome to Sleep Easy, where we invite you to leave behind the noise of the day and settle into a peaceful moment of rest. I'm so glad you've chosen to join us tonight. Our story is called The Moonlit Chronicles, a journey through the night. In this story, we follow two companions, Emma and Jack, as they embark on a journey that takes them through a world bathed in moonlight and shrouded in mystery. As the night unfolds, they travel across enchanted forests, cross paths with ancient creatures, and unlock the hidden wisdom of the stars. Along the way, they must confront the shadows of their pasts and discover the strength within themselves to face the unknown. Their adventure is not just about finding a destination, but about uncovering the magic that lives within them as they navigate the quiet, mystical hours of the night. Now, as you get comfortable, take a slow, deep breath. Let the weight of your body melt into the surface beneath you. With each breath, feel your muscles relax and your mind begin to quiet, ready to drift into the peaceful embrace of sleep. The car's engine sputtered to a stop, leaving a heavy silence hanging in the air. Emma glanced out the window, her breath fogging up the glass as she stared into the darkness beyond. The headlights cast long shadows over the empty road, and the night seemed to stretch endlessly, a black velvet curtain with only the stars to keep it company. "Dad, what's going on?" Emma asked, her voice tinged with unease. Jack, her father, sighed and turned the key in the ignition again, but the engine refused to start. He muttered under his breath, clearly frustrated. "I don't know, kiddo. The car just gave out. Probably something with the engine. We'll have to wait for a tow truck." Emma shifted in her seat, staring out at the trees that lined the side of the road. They were tall and dark, their branches swaying gently in the wind. The full moon above cast a silver glow on the forest, giving it an almost mystical appearance. It was a sight that should have been calming, but something about it felt strange, as if the forest itself were alive and watching. "Let's go for a walk while we wait. It might help pass the time," Jack suggested, noticing the unease in Emma's eyes. He opened the car door, the cool night air rushing in. "Just a short walk. I'll lock up the car." Emma hesitated for a moment, but curiosity got the better of her. She loved adventures, even the unexpected ones. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stepped out into the night. The air was crisp, and she could hear the soft rustle of leaves as the wind whispered through the trees. It was quiet, almost too quiet, save for the occasional distant call of an owl. Together, father and daughter made their way along the edge of the road, stepping onto a narrow, overgrown trail that seemed to lead into the forest. The trees here were different, older, taller, their bark dark and twisted. The path wound its way deeper into the woods, and soon, the car was just a faint outline in the distance. "Where do you think this leads?" Emma asked, her voice filled with wonder. Jack shrugged, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his voice. "I'm not sure. But we'll stick to the path. No sense getting lost." As they walked, the night seemed to grow quieter. The usual sounds of crickets and rustling leaves had faded away, replaced by a soft, almost imperceptible murmur that seemed to come from all around them. Emma stopped in her tracks, her ears straining to hear. The whispering grew louder, more distinct, though the words were impossible to make out. "Dad, do you hear that?" she asked, looking up at him. Jack paused, his brow furrowed. "I do. It sounds like whispering. But it's just the wind, Emma. Don't let it spook you." But Emma wasn't convinced. The sound was too deliberate, too rhythmic, like the forest itself was trying to tell them something. She glanced around, her eyes searching the shadows. There was something both beautiful and eerie about the woods. It felt as though they were walking through an ancient place, a place where secrets were hidden and forgotten stories lingered. "Maybe it's a trick of the light," Jack continued, trying to reassure her, but there was an edge to his voice now. Even he couldn't quite explain the strange feeling creeping up his spine. The path began to narrow, the trees pressing in around them, their branches arching above like dark, twisted fingers. The whispering grew louder still, almost as if it were coming from within the trees themselves. It was a soft, melodic hum, like voices carried on the wind, just out of reach. Emma's heart began to race. "Dad, we should go back. I don't like this." Jack nodded, but before they could turn around, something caught his eye, a flicker of movement between the trees. He squinted into the darkness, trying to make out what it was. It was just a glimpse, but it was enough to make him pause. The whispering seemed to swell, urging them forward, like an unseen hand beckoning them deeper into the forest. "Look," Emma whispered, tugging at his sleeve. In front of them, partially hidden in the shadows of the trees, stood a strange figure, a cloaked figure, its face hidden in the folds of its hood. The figure seemed to shimmer in the moonlight, its silhouette blending with the surrounding darkness. It stood perfectly still, as though waiting for them. Jack stepped forward, his instincts kicking in. "Hello?" he called out, his voice steady but cautious. The figure didn't respond immediately. Instead, it tilted its head slightly, as though studying them. Then, in a voice that seemed to carry both a warning and a promise, it spoke. "You have come at the right time," the figure said, its voice calm but full of weight. "The forest has chosen you." Before Jack could respond, the figure extended a hand, offering something small, a rolled-up piece of parchment tied with a silver ribbon. Emma's curiosity overwhelmed her fear, and she stepped forward, taking the parchment from the figure's outstretched hand. The moment her fingers touched the paper, the whispering grew louder, as though the forest itself were reacting to her touch. The figure spoke again, its voice softer now. "Follow the path, and it will guide you. But beware, for not everything here is as it seems." With that, the figure slowly melted back into the shadows, leaving only the echo of its words and the soft murmur of the forest behind. Jack and Emma stood in stunned silence, the parchment heavy in Emma's hands. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting for their next move. The forest seemed to press in around them as they stood frozen in the eerie silence. The parchment, now clutched tightly in Emma's hands, felt warm against her skin, as though it were alive with some strange energy. Jack glanced at his daughter, his face pale under the moonlight, but he could see the spark of excitement in her eyes. Emma had always been the adventurous one, the dreamer, while he was the cautious protector. But something about this place, this strange forest, had unsettled him in a way he couldn't quite explain. "We should keep moving," Jack said, breaking the stillness. "I don't know what that was about, but we need to find our way back to the car." Emma nodded, but her gaze lingered on the shadows where the figure had vanished. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were meant to be here, that the forest had called them for a reason. Despite her father's apprehension, her heart raced with the thrill of what lay ahead. "Do you think we should follow the map?" Emma asked, holding up the parchment. It was still tightly rolled, the silver ribbon still in place, but there was something strange about it now. Somehow, it felt heavier, as if the forest itself were waiting for them to open it. Jack hesitated. "I don't know, Emma. This feels off. But we don't really have much of a choice. Let's see what it says." They unrolled the parchment together, their eyes scanning the delicate writing. It was in an elegant script, but the words seemed to shimmer and shift as if they were written in a language neither of them had seen before. As they focused, the letters rearranged themselves, forming clear words. "The path ahead is the road less traveled. At the crossroads, you will meet a stranger who will guide you." Emma's pulse quickened. "A crossroads? That's what we're looking for, right?" Jack looked up at the dense woods around them. "There's no telling how far we'll have to go to find this crossroads, but let's stay on the trail." "We'll keep going." As they continued deeper into the woods, the path grew narrower, and the trees seemed to grow even taller and more twisted. The whispering had faded to a soft hum, but there was an undercurrent of something strange in the air, a feeling that they were not alone, that unseen eyes were watching them. Emma couldn't shake the sensation that they were being guided, as though some force was urging them forward. After what felt like an eternity, the path suddenly opened up to a clearing, and before them lay a crossroad, 3 paths, each leading off in different directions. The moonlight illuminated the crossroads, casting long shadows across the ground. The trees around the clearing stood still, as though holding their breath. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, from the shadows, a figure appeared. At first, Emma thought it was the same cloaked figure they had encountered earlier, but as the figure stepped into the moonlight, she realized this was someone entirely different. The stranger was a man, tall and slender, with a weathered face that seemed to be carved from stone. His hair was silver, and his eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the light of the moon. He wore a long, flowing cloak, but unlike the first figure, this one seemed to be made of fabric that shimmered like the stars themselves. "Good evening," the stranger said in a calm, melodic voice, his gaze steady as he looked at Jack and Emma. "I see you have found your way to the crossroads." Jack instinctively stepped in front of Emma, his protective instincts flaring. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice a mix of caution and concern. The stranger smiled, though it was not a warm smile. "Names are but fleeting things in a place such as this. You may call me Eldrick, for that is the name I have carried for many lifetimes." Emma stepped forward, her curiosity getting the best of her. "Are you here to help us?" Eldrick nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. "I am here to guide you, yes. You have been chosen, after all. The forest does not reveal itself to just anyone." Jack frowned, his hand still on Emma's shoulder. "Chosen? For what?" Eldrick's smile faded, and he looked out over the crossroads. "The forest is a place between worlds, between dreams and reality. It holds secrets, both ancient and powerful. Those who wander its paths must understand its language, must follow the guidance it offers. And sometimes that means walking a road that is not always clear." He turned his gaze back to them. "The crossroads are a place of choice. You must decide which path you will take. Each leads to something different, and each will test you in ways you cannot yet imagine." Emma glanced at her father, uncertainty clouding her features. "How do we know which path is the right one?" Eldrick's eyes gleamed with a knowing look. "There is no right path, only the path you choose. But know this, the choices you make here will shape what comes next. You cannot turn back once you've chosen. The forest will not allow it." Jack looked at Emma, weighing his options. "And if we don't choose?" he asked, his voice low. Eldrick's smile returned, but it was cold. "The crossroads are not a place for hesitation. The longer you wait, the more the forest will change, and you may find yourself lost forever." With that, he stepped aside, gesturing to the three paths. "The decision is yours." Emma took a deep breath, her heart pounding. The three paths stretched before them, each one different from the other. One path was lined with towering trees that seemed to shimmer in the moonlight, their leaves glowing faintly. Another path was darker, almost completely shrouded in shadow, with only the faintest hint of light guiding the way. The third path was covered in soft moss, and from it came a faint, melodic hum, like the sound of distant music. Jack stood still for a moment, then looked down at Emma. "What do you think?" Emma gazed at each path in turn, feeling the weight of the decision pressing on her chest. "I don't know," she whispered. "But I think we should trust the map. It says we're supposed to follow the path that's the least traveled." Jack nodded slowly. "Then we'll take the one with the moss. It looks like it's been the least disturbed." With a deep breath, they stepped toward the moss-covered path. As they did, Eldrick's voice echoed through the clearing, though he had not moved. "Remember, The forest does not reveal its truths easily. Be prepared for what you will find. As the last words faded into the night, they took their first steps down the path, the moonlight casting long shadows behind them. The whispering woods were silent now, but the air felt thick with the promise of what was to come. The moss-covered path seemed to stretch on endlessly, the air growing thicker with each step. The trees on either side loomed like silent sentinels, their branches intertwined above, blocking much of the moonlight. The hum that had filled the air earlier had faded into an unsettling quiet, leaving only the sound of their footsteps crunching softly against the moss. Emma's heart raced. The decision to take the moss-covered path felt right, yet the further they went, the more the feeling of unease crept up on her. It was as though the forest itself was watching, waiting, but for what? She glanced up at her father. His face was set, his jaw tight, though his eyes betrayed the same unease she felt. "Do you think we're heading in the right direction?" Emma asked, her voice a mere whisper, as if speaking too loudly would break the fragile peace of the forest. "I don't know," Jack replied, his gaze flicking from the path ahead to the sides, scanning the trees. "But there's no turning back now. We have to trust the map." The parchment, which Emma still held tightly in her hands, seemed to grow warmer with each step. She had tried to read it again, but the words still shifted and shimmered in ways that made them impossible to decipher. It was as if the map had a life of its own, a magic that reacted to their surroundings, to their presence. Suddenly, as if on cue, the forest around them seemed to shift. The trees parted slightly ahead, revealing a small clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a stone pedestal, ancient and covered in ivy, upon which lay a small, weathered chest. The chest seemed to glow faintly, casting a soft light that illuminated the clearing. The hum that had disappeared returned, but this time it was stronger, more resonant, as though it were coming from the chest itself. Emma's breath caught in her throat. "Do you see that, Dad?" Jack stopped and stared at the chest, his hand instinctively reaching for the protective charm around his neck. "I do. It's strange. It doesn't feel like a normal object." They approached cautiously, every step measured, as if the very air around them had become charged with something powerful. Emma felt the map in her hands pulse with warmth again, as if it were urging her forward. She stepped closer to the pedestal, her fingers lightly brushing the surface of the chest. It was covered in intricate carvings, symbols that seemed to shift as if they were moving in response to her touch. When Emma's fingers met the chest, the humming grew louder, almost vibrating through the ground beneath her feet. Without warning, the lid of the chest creaked open on its own, revealing a small object nestled inside. It was an ornate compass, its casing made of brass, its needle not pointing north, but instead swirling in place, as though it were unsure of its direction. Jack took a step back, his eyes wide. "What is that?" Emma reached for the compass carefully, as if it might vanish at any moment. The moment her fingers touched the cool metal, a surge of energy shot through her, sending a brief but intense wave of warmth and light through her body. She gasped, the world around her seeming to momentarily blur. "Are you okay?" Jack asked, his voice tinged with concern. Emma nodded, but the sensation was overwhelming. I think this is what we were supposed to find. Look." She held the compass up to the light, and as she did, the needle stopped swirling, pointing steadily toward the north, but in the direction of the darkest part of the woods. The forest beyond seemed to grow even more shadowed, the trees thicker, their trunks blackened as if they were made of stone. Suddenly, the enchanted map began to shift in her hands, the words on the parchment rearranging themselves into new shapes and lines. It was as though the compass was guiding the map, and the forest around them seemed to respond, the whispers growing louder as if the trees themselves were speaking. "Emma, what's happening?" Jack's voice was filled with awe and fear as the map began to glow faintly, its words now clearly visible in a language Emma could read, though the script was unfamiliar. "To those who seek the truth, follow the path of the compass. Its needle will guide you through the trials ahead. Trust in its direction, and you will find what you seek." Emma looked up at her father, a mixture of excitement and uncertainty in her eyes. "I think we have to follow it. The compass, it's pointing the way. And the map says we need to trust it." Jack hesitated, his hand on the hilt of a small knife tucked into his belt. "This is all. It's too much, Emma. I didn't sign up for this." But he stopped himself, realizing it was futile to argue. "All right. We follow the compass." With a deep breath, they set off in the direction the compass pointed, its needle unwavering, guiding them deeper into the shadowed woods. The trees seemed to grow taller, the path more narrow, and the air heavier with each step they took. The whispers intensified, now more distinct, more urgent. As they walked, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The woods felt alive with secrets, and every rustle in the distance made her jump. But she held the compass firmly, its steady pulse reminding her that they weren't lost, at least, not yet. The deeper they ventured into the forest, the more the whispers became words, barely audible but growing clearer. They came in a language Emma couldn't understand, but there was something familiar about them. It was as though they were speaking directly to her, the voice of the forest reaching out to her. The path narrowed even further, until it became little more than a faint trail, barely visible beneath the thick underbrush. But the compass led them onward, unwavering, guiding them through the thickening shadows. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached a clearing, a small, tranquil pond, its waters dark and still, reflecting the moon like a perfect mirror. In the center of the pond stood a single stone pillar, weathered and worn by time. The whispers had stopped, replaced by a heavy, silent stillness. Emma approached the water's edge, the compass now vibrating softly in her hand, its needle pointing directly toward the pillar. Jack looked around cautiously. "What now?" Emma stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew they were close, closer than ever to uncovering the mystery of the forest and their place within it. The map and the compass had led them here, to this strange and silent place. But what did it mean? As she approached the pillar, the surface of the pond rippled, and for the briefest moment, Emma thought she saw something moving beneath the water, something ancient and powerful, waiting for them to make their next move. "Dad," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder and fear. "I think we're about to find out." The stillness of the pond stretched into an eerie quiet, broken only by the gentle rustling of the leaves. Emma stood by the water's edge, the compass now vibrating softly in her palm. The stone pillar, weathered with age and marked by mysterious symbols, loomed before them, its surface slick with moisture. The moonlight danced on the water, casting fleeting reflections that shimmered and faded like distant stars. Jack stepped closer to Emma, his eyes scanning the clearing with a wariness that had settled deep in his bones. "What do you think we're supposed to do?" Emma didn't respond immediately. She felt drawn to the pillar, as though some unseen force was beckoning her forward. She glanced down at the compass in her hands, its needle still pointed unwaveringly toward the stone structure. It was as if the compass itself was guiding her, pushing her toward something she couldn't yet fully understand. With a quiet breath, Emma reached out and touched the surface of the pillar. The moment her fingers made contact, the air seemed to shift. The ground beneath them rumbled slightly, and the surface of the pond rippled in a way that felt both unnatural and otherworldly. The whispers that had once surrounded them returned, now clearer and more urgent. The language was still foreign, but this time it seemed to vibrate through her very bones, a sense of knowing weaving through her thoughts. Suddenly, the pillar began to glow, its symbols lighting up one by one, pulsing with the rhythm of the whispers. The light grew brighter, casting long shadows that stretched across the clearing, merging with the darkness of the surrounding woods. Then, without warning, the pillar split open, revealing a glowing doorway hidden within its core. Beyond the doorway was a world unlike anything Emma had ever imagined. The forest, the stone pillar, the pond, all of it began to fade as if they were simply reflections in a dream. Emma's heart raced, her breath catching in her throat. The meadow that lay before her was bathed in soft, silver light. The air smelled sweet, like jasmine and pine, but there was an unmistakable sense of magic in the air, a hum that vibrated beneath her feet. Is this real?" Jack asked, his voice trembling slightly. Emma stepped through the glowing doorway, her feet barely touching the soft grass beneath her. As she crossed the threshold, she felt an odd sensation, like stepping into a dream, or perhaps a memory. The world around them had shifted entirely, no longer the dark, foreboding woods, but an expansive, starlit meadow that seemed to stretch endlessly beneath the night sky. The stars above were unlike any Emma had ever seen before. They were brighter, larger, and more vivid, their constellations unfamiliar, but strangely comforting. The entire sky felt alive, as if the stars themselves were watching over them. The meadow was bathed in the light of 1,000 stars, their soft glow illuminating the rolling hills and the wildflowers that dotted the landscape. The flowers themselves seemed to shimmer, their petals delicate and translucent like moonlight. Emma took a deep breath, her senses overwhelmed by the beauty of this place. She could feel the weight of the journey pressing on her, but the peacefulness of the meadow was a balm to her frayed nerves. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt as though she could truly relax, as though the world around her had somehow settled into a calm, familiar rhythm. "Where are we?" she whispered, turning to Jack. But her father, too, stood frozen, his eyes wide with awe as he surveyed their new surroundings. "I don't know," Jack replied quietly. "But I think this is what we were meant to find." As they walked deeper into the meadow, the sounds of the forest fell away, replaced by the soft, melodic hum that seemed to emanate from the earth itself. The air was thick with magic, and Emma could almost feel it brushing against her skin, like a gentle caress. The compass in her hand pulsed with an energy that was both familiar and foreign, as though it, too, was beginning to understand its purpose. Suddenly, they came upon a small grove at the heart of the meadow. In the center of the grove stood a tree, unlike any Emma had ever seen. Its trunk was tall and silver, its leaves shimmering like stardust. The tree's branches stretched high into the sky, and at its base lay a large stone tablet, partially obscured by the roots of the tree. The tablet was covered in the same shifting symbols that had appeared on the pillar back at the pond. The compass's needle began to spin wildly, as if searching for something. Emma felt a strange pull toward the stone tablet. She moved closer, kneeling down beside it, and carefully brushed the roots away, revealing the full surface of the stone. The symbols on the tablet were the same as those on the pillar, and this time, the words seemed to shift in a way that was even more vivid, clearer than ever before. The script began to glow, and Emma could understand it, though it was a language she had never learned. To the one who seeks the truth, the path is not always clear. Follow the light of the stars, and you will find what lies beyond the horizon. Only by embracing what is hidden will the true nature of the journey be revealed. Emma's heart raced. She could feel the weight of the words, the gravity of the journey they were about to undertake. The meadow, with all its beauty, was not an end. It was a beginning. She glanced at Jack, who was still staring at the tree, his face awash with wonder. "What do you think it means?" "I think we're being shown the way," Jack said quietly, his voice filled with awe. "But this isn't the end, Emma. It's only the beginning." As Emma stood, the light from the stars above seemed to grow brighter, the hum in the air intensifying. She felt something shift within her, something deep and powerful. The meadow was alive, and it was waiting for them to take the next step. Whatever lay beyond this point would test them, challenge them in ways they couldn't yet understand. But Emma knew, deep down, that they had no choice but to continue. She looked back at the grove, the tree, and the glowing tablet one last time. The stars above seemed to wink, as though acknowledging her resolve. "Let's go," Dad," Emma said, her voice filled with determination. "We have to keep moving forward." Jack nodded, taking her hand, his grip tight and reassuring. Together, they stepped away from the grove, the stars guiding their way as they ventured deeper into the starlit meadow, ready for whatever lay ahead. The night air was cool against their skin as Emma and Jack walked deeper into the starlit meadow, their footsteps soft against the ground that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. The stars above continued to shine brightly, casting their silvery light on the path ahead. The hum that had resonated in the air earlier was now almost imperceptible, replaced by an eerie silence that seemed to envelop the entire meadow. As they walked, Emma noticed that the flowers around them had begun to shift, their petals glowing faintly as if responding to the presence of the compass still clutched in her hand. The soft glow illuminated the path, guiding them forward, yet every time they looked ahead, the landscape seemed to change, becoming more mysterious with each step. The meadow felt endless, stretching on in every direction, and Emma's heart began to race. "Do you feel that?" Emma whispered, stopping for a moment to glance around. The sense of magic in the air was growing stronger, but there was something else, something unsettling. Jack paused beside her, looking around as well. "Something's different," he said, his voice low. "It's like we're being led somewhere, but I can't quite place it." They continued walking, the air thick with the weight of anticipation. After what felt like hours of walking through the meadow, they finally reached the edge of a small clearing. Nestled among the tall grasses was a tiny cottage, its thatched roof glowing with a faint golden light. It was completely out of place in the vast, open meadow, small, humble, yet radiating warmth. The cottage appeared to be made of old, weathered stone, with ivy climbing its walls and a single window that gleamed softly in the moonlight. A wooden door stood ajar, as if inviting them in. "That wasn't there a moment ago," Jack said, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. "Where did it come from?" Emma stepped forward, her curiosity outweighing the hesitation gnawing at her. The compass in her hand still pulsed gently, the needle now pointing directly toward the cottage. It was as if the house had appeared for them, waiting to be discovered. She glanced back at Jack, her heart beating faster. "I don't know, but I think we're supposed to go inside," she said, her voice steady despite the swirl of emotions inside her. Jack hesitated, his eyes scanning the cottage's surroundings. "We don't know who or what lives here." "I know," Emma replied, "but we've been following clues all along. This feels like the next step." Jack exhaled slowly, nodding. "All right. But we stay cautious." With that, they approached the cottage, stepping softly across the cool grass. As they neared the door, Emma noticed that the air around the house was different, warmer, somehow, as though it were breathing with life. The hum of magic that had faded earlier returned, but now it was gentle and soothing, almost like a lullaby carried on the breeze. They entered the cottage together, the door creaking softly as they pushed it open. Inside, the air smelled of herbs and wood smoke, with a faint trace of something floral. The space was small but cozy, with a stone fireplace crackling softly in the corner. The glow of the fire danced across the room, casting flickering shadows on the walls. The cottage was furnished simply, with a wooden table covered in neatly arranged scrolls and books. Shelves lined the walls, filled with strange trinkets and jars that seemed to pulse with an energy of their own. At the far end of the room was a large armchair where an elderly woman sat, her long silver hair cascading down her back. She was bent over a small bowl, her hands moving with practiced grace as she stirred something within it. When Emma and Jack entered, the woman looked up, her eyes twinkling with a knowing light. There was no surprise in her gaze, only the kind of quiet understanding that comes from seeing things that others cannot. "Ah," the woman said, her voice soft and warm, yet carrying the weight of years. "I've been expecting you." Emma froze, her heart thudding in her chest. "You've been expecting us?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman smiled gently, setting down the bowl she had been holding. "Yes, child. The stars told me you would come. And the forest has brought you here." "Who are you?" Jack asked, stepping forward cautiously. "And how do you know about us?" The woman's smile widened, though her eyes held a deep, ancient sadness. "My name is Lyra. I've lived in this cottage for longer than I care to count. I am the keeper of the meadow, and I know the paths that lead through it. The compass you carry, Emma, it is no ordinary object. It is the key to unlocking the hidden places of this world, and perhaps others." Emma's hand instinctively tightened around the compass. "A key to other worlds?" Lyra nodded. "Yes. You see, this meadow, and everything you've encountered so far, is but a small part of a much greater tapestry. There are places hidden from ordinary eyes, places where the threads of the world intertwine. The compass will guide you, but only if you are willing to trust in it, and in yourselves." Jack exchanged a glance with Emma, his brow furrowed with questions. "What exactly are we supposed to do? Why us?" Lyra's expression softened, and she motioned for them to sit by the fire. As they did, the warmth from the flames wrapped around them like a comforting embrace. "The journey you are on is one of great importance. You have been chosen because you hold something inside you that the forest and the stars recognize. You have the strength to face what lies ahead." Emma's heart skipped a beat. "What lies ahead?" Lyra's eyes grew distant, as if she were gazing far beyond the walls of the cottage, beyond the meadow, and into the unknown. "The path you walk will not be easy. There are trials ahead, challenges that will test you both. But you must remain steadfast. The compass, the map, and the stars, they will guide you, but you must trust in the unseen forces that have led you here." Jack leaned forward. "And what do we do once we've passed the trials?" Lyra turned her gaze back to them, her smile fading slightly. "Only then will you uncover the truth. The true nature of the journey, and the reason you were called to it, will be revealed. But until then, you must be brave. There are dangers, yes. But there is also hope. And through hope, you will find your way. Emma's mind swirled with the enormity of what Lyra had said. The compass was more than just a guide, it was a key to something larger, something hidden in the folds of the world itself. The journey ahead would be perilous, but it was a journey they had no choice but to take. Lyra stood up slowly, her movements graceful despite her age. Rest here tonight. You will need your strength for what comes next. Emma nodded, though her mind was racing with questions. As Lyra left them by the fire, Emma turned to Jack, her thoughts still swirling. I think we're closer than ever, Dad. But there's so much we still don't understand. Jack put a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We'll figure it out, Emma. One step at a time. As the fire crackled on the hearth, Emma gazed out the window, her thoughts drifting to the journey that lay ahead. She could feel the weight of it, but also the undeniable pull of the compass, guiding them forward into the unknown. The hidden cottage had given them rest, but the real trials awaited, and Emma knew they were ready whatever came next. The first light of dawn filtered through the small window of the cottage, casting a soft golden glow across the room. Emma woke slowly, her mind still buzzing with the words Lyra had spoken the night before. The fire had burned down to glowing embers, and the scent of herbs still lingered in the air, offering a sense of comfort and quiet mystery. Lyra had given them a night to rest, but now Emma knew that they couldn't stay in the cottage forever. The journey, the trials ahead, and the mystery of the compass, they all weighed heavily on her. She could feel the pull of the unknown, an unexplainable sense that something much bigger was unfolding around them. Jack was already awake, sitting by the hearth, staring into the fading embers. He looked up when he heard Emma stir, his tired eyes warm but filled with the same uncertainty that lingered in her own heart. "Did you sleep well?" he asked quietly, though his voice held an undercurrent of unease. Emma nodded slowly, though her mind was far from restful. "As well as I could," she said, getting up and stretching. She reached for the compass on the table, its steady pulse now a comforting presence in her hand. Lyra entered the room just then, her presence as quiet as always. She gave Emma and Jack a knowing look, as if she could sense their readiness to move on. "You've rested enough. It's time." Emma didn't need any more encouragement. She had already made up her mind. "Where do we go from here?" she asked, her voice steady. Lyra smiled, though there was a hint of sorrow in her gaze. "Follow the compass," she said. "It will lead you. But you will need to find the old clock first. The clock holds the next key." "The old clock?" Jack repeated, raising an eyebrow. "What clock?" Lyra motioned toward the door. "You'll find it hidden in the forest. It is an ancient thing, a relic of the past. But it holds secrets, secrets that you will need to uncover in order to move forward. Emma glanced at Jack, her heart pounding. The clock was the next piece of the puzzle, she was sure of it. With a brief nod, she turned toward the door, the compass pulling her forward once more. They left the cottage and ventured back into the meadow, where the air was crisp and fresh, and the sky above was a soft shade of blue. The meadow seemed to stretch endlessly before them, the winding path of flowers and grasses leading them through its open expanse. But Emma knew they had to be close now. The compass was vibrating softly in her hand, its needle pointing steadfastly toward the forest that lay beyond the meadow's edge. As they neared the tree line, the forest seemed to darken, the canopy above thick with ancient branches that blocked out much of the sunlight. The air grew heavier, more mysterious, as if the trees themselves were watching their every step. A chill ran down Emma's spine, but she held her ground. The compass, glowing faintly, was their guide. After walking for what felt like an hour, the trees began to thin, and the sound of a distant ticking reached their ears. The sound was soft at first, like the ticking of a far-off clock, but as they drew nearer, it grew louder, more distinct. The forest opened up to reveal a small clearing, and there, in the center of it all, stood an enormous clock tower. It was unlike any clock Emma had ever seen. The tower was made of weathered stone, its surface covered in creeping ivy and moss. The clock face was set high above them, the hands frozen in time, stuck at midnight. But the most curious thing about the clock was the thick layer of dust and cobwebs that covered everything. It seemed as though no one had touched the clock in centuries. The ticking sound was now unmistakable, echoing from deep within the tower. "Is this it?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma nodded, her heart racing. "It has to be." The door to the clock tower stood slightly ajar, as if waiting for them to enter. The air inside was thick with the smell of aged wood and dust. As Emma stepped inside, the sound of the ticking grew louder, filling the space around them with a steady, rhythmic beat. The tower's interior was vast, its stone walls lined with shelves full of forgotten relics and old, rusted gears. A staircase spiraled upward, disappearing into the shadows above. At the base of the tower, directly beneath the frozen clock face, was a pedestal. On the pedestal rested a large, brass key, its surface tarnished with age, but still gleaming with a faint light, as if it held something powerful within. Emma stepped closer, her eyes fixed on the key. The compass in her hand pulsed harder, its needle spinning rapidly. She felt an overwhelming sense of urgency. "Do you think it's safe?" Jack asked, standing at her side. "I don't know," Emma admitted, her voice filled with hesitation. "But it's the next step. I think we have to take it." Without another word, she reached out and took the key, feeling its cold surface against her palm. As soon as she touched it, the ticking noise stopped. The entire tower seemed to fall into a profound silence, as though time itself had held its breath. Emma stared down at the key, and just as her fingers closed around it, the floor beneath her feet began to tremble. The walls of the tower shook, and the air seemed to vibrate with energy, as if the tower itself were awakening after a long slumber. A deep, resonant voice filled the room, echoing from all around them. "The key is yours. But remember this, travelers, the clock does not only measure time. It holds memories. And those memories are not always kind." Emma froze, her heart pounding. The voice was distant, but there was a weight to it that felt real, like something ancient and powerful was speaking directly to them. "What does it mean?" Jack whispered, his voice trembling. "I don't know," Emma replied, her fingers still wrapped tightly around the key. But she could feel the weight of its significance. She could feel the power coursing through it, and a deep sense of foreboding settled over her. With the key in hand, Emma turned toward the spiral staircase. The tower felt alive now, as if it were waiting for them to make their next move. "There's only one way forward," she said, her voice steady, though she felt the rising tension in her chest. "Let's see what secrets this clock holds." Together, they started up the stairs, the sound of their footsteps echoing through the vast, empty tower. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the tower itself was guiding them to a truth they weren't yet ready to face. The stairs creaked underfoot as Emma and Jack climbed higher into the tower, the air growing cooler with each step. The flickering light from the torch Emma had found on the wall cast long shadows, the flames dancing and flickering against the stone walls. The rhythmic ticking of the clock had returned, echoing in their ears as they ascended. Each tick seemed louder than the last, vibrating deep within their bones as if the very heart of the tower was alive and beating. By the time they reached the top, the sound had become almost deafening, reverberating off the walls and filling the space with an overwhelming sense of urgency. They found themselves standing before a heavy wooden door, intricately carved with symbols they couldn't immediately decipher. The door was slightly ajar, the light from the torch spilling into the room beyond. Emma pushed the door open cautiously, and they stepped inside. The room was vast, much larger than they had expected. In the center of the room stood a large, circular window, framed by thick, velvet curtains. Through the window, the entire forest could be seen, stretching far into the distance, bathed in the soft light of the setting sun. But it wasn't the view that caught Emma's attention, it was the creature perched on a large stone pedestal in the center of the room. An owl. But not just any owl. This owl was enormous, its feathers a shimmering mix of silver and gold, its eyes glowing a soft amber. The owl sat calmly, watching them with an unnerving sense of awareness. The room seemed to pulse with an energy that was both ancient and wise, as if the owl were the guardian of all the secrets the tower held. Emma and Jack exchanged a glance, both of them aware that they had stumbled upon something significant. "Is it real?" Jack asked, his voice a mix of wonder and disbelief. The owl blinked slowly, its amber eyes never leaving them. Then, to their shock, it spoke. "Real enough to know when I am being observed, young travelers." Emma gasped, stumbling back a step. You can talk? The owl tilted its head slightly, as if amused by her surprise. Indeed. I am not merely an owl of feathers and bone. I am the keeper of the clock's secrets, the one who watches over the memories that lie within this tower. Emma's heart skipped a beat. Memories? She repeated, her voice quiet. What do you mean by that? The owl spread its wings slowly, the golden feathers catching the last of the sunlight from the window. This clock, it began, its voice resonating deeply, is not a mere instrument of time. It holds the echoes of all that has passed. Each tick is a memory, each talk a piece of the past. It is through the clock that you will uncover the truth of your journey. Jack stepped forward, his brow furrowed. But why us? Why have we been brought here? The owl's eyes glowed brighter as it answered. You, Emma, and you, Jack, are not here by accident. The clock has seen your paths intertwine long before you entered this tower. It is your destinies that have called you to this place. Emma's mind raced with the owl's words. Destiny, it was a word she had heard before, but never like this. Everything they had experienced, from the whispering woods to the mysterious cottage, the compass, the map, had it all been leading them here, to this moment? And if so, what was it that awaited them in the heart of the clock's secrets? Tell us what we need to do, Emma said, her voice steady but filled with a quiet urgency. The owl's gaze softened, and it spoke in a more measured tone. To unlock the secrets of the clock, you must first understand that time is not a straight line. It is a web, a series of interconnected threads that stretch across all realms, past, present, and future. The key you possess, child, will help you unravel this web. But be warned, not all memories are meant to be uncovered. Some are better left forgotten. Emma swallowed hard. How do we know which ones to uncover? The owl's amber eyes seemed to deepen in thought before it answered. You will know when the time comes. The key will guide you, just as the compass did. But be mindful of the path you choose. Every action has consequences, and the weight of the past is not easily lifted. Jack stepped closer to Emma, his expression thoughtful. What happens if we fail? If we can't unlock the clock's secrets? The owl tilted its head again, its feathers rustling softly. Failure is not the end, but it is a heavy burden to bear. You may find yourselves lost, wandering in the web of time without purpose. But you are not alone, travelers. The clock, the compass, the map, they are all parts of a greater whole. And the stars themselves are watching over you. Emma felt a shiver run down her spine. The stars? Yes, the owl replied. They are the beacons that guide those who are lost, the silent witnesses to all that happens in the realms of time. They have been guiding you from the very beginning. But the stars will not save you if you do not trust in your own strength. There was a long silence as the weight of the owl's words settled over them. Emma glanced at Jack, his face filled with both concern and determination. "We've come this far," Jack said softly. "We can't turn back now." Emma nodded, her resolve strengthening. She wasn't sure what awaited them, but the owl was right about one thing: they couldn't turn back. Not when so many mysteries remained unsolved, and not when they were so close to uncovering the truth about their journey. The owl seemed to sense their determination and nodded slowly. "Very well. The first step has been taken. But remember this, young travelers, what you discover here will change everything. Time, memories, destinies, they are not as simple as they seem. The clock's secrets are not meant for the faint of heart. Proceed with caution." With those final words, the owl spread its wings and flew silently out of the tower, vanishing into the vast sky beyond the window. Emma stood still for a moment, absorbing everything the owl had said. The weight of the clock's secrets was now more tangible than ever, and she could feel the heavy pull of fate guiding her forward. "We're getting closer," Emma said, her voice firm. "I can feel it. We just have to stay strong and keep moving forward." Jack gave her a small smile, though his eyes were full of uncertainty. "We will. Together." With that, they turned their attention back to the clock, the brass key still in Emma's hand. There was no going back now. They were ready to uncover the truth, no matter what it took. The night had fully descended, and the tower, now silent, seemed to hum with the lingering energy of the owl's words. Emma and Jack, hearts heavy with the weight of the knowledge they had gained, stood side by side, staring at the ancient clock. The owl's cryptic warnings echoed in their minds, urging caution as they moved forward into the unknown. After a long moment of contemplation, Emma turned toward Jack. "The owl said that the compass and the key would guide us. We can't waste any more time." Jack nodded, his expression resolute, though there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "What now? What are we supposed to do next?" Emma glanced at the compass in her hand. Its needle had stopped moving, pointing firmly toward the ground. The golden glow from the brass key seemed to pulse faintly, as if resonating with something deeper in the tower. A soft hum emanated from the floor beneath them, vibrating through their feet. "That's it," Emma whispered. "We need to go below." They turned and followed the hum, making their way to a small, unassuming door at the back of the room. It had been hidden beneath layers of dust and cobwebs, nearly invisible to anyone who hadn't been looking carefully. The moment they stepped toward it, the door creaked open on its own, revealing a narrow staircase leading downward. "Here goes nothing," Jack muttered, glancing at Emma, who nodded back, her determination unwavering. The staircase spiraled downward, the air growing colder with every step. The walls were lined with old stone, slick with moisture. A faint, distant sound could be heard, something like the trickling of water. The deeper they descended, the louder the sound became, until it was almost deafening. Finally, the staircase ended at a heavy iron door, and the sound of water was now unmistakable. Emma hesitated for a moment before placing her hand on the cold metal. The door creaked open with a groan, revealing a vast cavern beneath the tower. The chamber was filled with a soft, ethereal glow, an otherworldly light that seemed to emanate from the very air itself. In the center of the cavern was a wide river, its surface shimmering with a silver light that seemed to reflect the full moon above. The river flowed gently, its waters winding through the cavern in a way that defied logic. The light coming from the river wasn't from the moon outside, but from something within it, a pulse of energy, gentle yet powerful. Emma stepped forward, entranced by the sight. This is it. This is what we were meant to find. The river glowed in the moonlight, its surface calm and inviting. The air was thick with a sense of magic, as though the very river was alive, carrying with it the stories of the ages. Emma could feel a deep pull within her chest, an undeniable connection to the flowing water. Jack stepped beside her, his voice low and awed. A river of moonlight. I've never seen anything like it. The compass in Emma's hand started to hum, its needle spinning faster than it had ever moved before. She looked down at it, and the faint glow of the key responded, lighting up as if to signal the next step. There's something in this river, Emma said, her voice filled with awe. The key, the compass, they want us to go into it. Jack looked at her, concern flickering in his eyes. But what if we're not ready? What if this is a trap? Emma shook her head. We have no choice. We've come too far to turn back now. The river is part of the path. We need to trust it. With a deep breath, she stepped into the river. The cool water rushed over her ankles, its surface smooth and soft, like silk. To her surprise, it didn't feel cold. In fact, the moment her feet touched the water, she felt an overwhelming sense of warmth, like being wrapped in a comforting embrace. It was as though the river itself recognized her presence. Jack followed, stepping carefully into the water beside her. As soon as he touched the river's surface, the moonlight around them seemed to intensify, filling the cavern with an almost blinding brilliance. The river began to glow more brightly, casting ripples of silver light across the walls of the cavern. The path ahead was clear now. The river's current seemed to pull them forward, gently but with undeniable force. Emma gripped the compass tightly, her heart racing with anticipation. We're not just walking through this river. We're being guided. It's taking us somewhere. They moved deeper into the river, the current steady but insistent, pulling them toward an unknown destination. The further they traveled, the more they felt as though they were drifting between worlds. The air around them shimmered, and the sound of the water seemed to warp and shift, as if the river was whispering to them, sharing its secrets. It was a quiet, soothing sound, like a lullaby carried on the breeze. As they journeyed further, the river split into multiple streams, each one flowing in a different direction. Emma glanced at the compass in her hand. The needle pointed unwaveringly toward one of the streams, its glow intensifying as they neared. The river had chosen their path. Jack followed her lead without question, his trust in her growing with each passing moment. The glowing stream led them to a small island in the center of the cavern, where an ancient stone archway stood, bathed in the moonlight that poured from above. The arch seemed to pulse with energy, as though it were a gateway to something far beyond the cavern. "This is it," Emma whispered, her voice filled with awe. "The next step." The moment they reached the archway, the river's current stopped. The water around them stilled, and the gentle flow of moonlight slowed to a soft, peaceful glow. The compass in Emma's hand vibrated, and the key around her neck grew warm against her skin. Together, they approached the archway, the next chapter of their journey waiting just beyond it. As they stepped through the archway, the world around them seemed to blur. The cavern, the river, the moonlight, all of it faded into a distant memory, replaced by a vast expanse of stars. The air was thin and crisp, and the ground beneath them was firm and solid. But what awaited them here, they didn't yet know. The river of moonlight had brought them to the threshold of something much greater. And as they stood on the edge of the unknown, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they had just crossed into a new realm, one where time, space, and destiny were no longer bound by the rules they had once known. The journey was far from over. But for the first time, Emma felt certain that they were on the right path. The stars above them stretched out in an endless expanse, twinkling softly, as if they were watching the travelers with quiet curiosity. Emma and Jack stood on the edge of a vast, rocky plateau, the air crisp and filled with the scent of something ancient and untamed. The archway they had passed through had vanished behind them, and now they were alone in a strange, otherworldly land. The ground beneath their feet was uneven, made of smooth, polished stones that seemed to shimmer with a faint inner glow. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she gazed around, taking in the sight. Far below, the plateau dropped into a massive cavern, its depths shrouded in shadows, but dotted with countless points of light, faint, ethereal glows that flickered like stars in the night sky. "The glowstone cavern," Jack whispered, his voice filled with awe. Emma nodded, her gaze locked on the cavern below. "I think this is where the river was leading us." The cavern itself seemed to pulse with life, each glowstone pulsing in rhythm with the beating of their hearts. It was as if the very earth beneath them was alive, breathing, sharing its energy with everything around it. The atmosphere was thick with magic, its presence so tangible that it was almost overwhelming. The air shimmered with an almost electric charge, and as they made their way down the plateau, Emma felt a pull, a gentle tug at her heart that guided her forward. It was the same feeling she had experienced when the compass had glowed, and when the key had hummed with energy. "Do you feel that?" Emma asked, glancing at Jack, who was staring at the glowing stones in awe. Jack nodded. "It's like it's calling us. We have to go deeper." They continued forward, their footsteps echoing on the glowing stone beneath them. The further they ventured into the cavern, the brighter the glowstones became, their light growing warmer and more intense. The air seemed to hum with power, and the rocks around them seemed to shimmer in response to their presence, guiding their way deeper into the heart of the cavern. As they walked, the glowstones began to form patterns, constellations, images, and symbols etched into the very walls of the cavern. They moved with them, shifting like the stars themselves were rearranging to show them the path. "Look at that," Jack said, pointing to a cluster of glowstones ahead. The light had begun to form intricate shapes in the cavern, resembling an ancient map of some kind, with symbols and markings that neither Emma nor Jack could fully decipher. "That must be the way," Emma said, her voice filled with wonder. "We just need to follow the pattern." They continued along the path the glowstones created, their surroundings growing ever more mysterious and enchanting. It wasn't long before they reached a massive archway carved into the stone itself. The arch was made from what seemed to be a single piece of rock, its surface etched with intricate runes and symbols that seemed to shift when looked at, like living words in an ancient tongue. Emma stepped closer to the arch, feeling an unspoken connection to the stone, to the history it contained. The feeling in the air intensified, the magic around them thickening as they neared the entrance. "This is it," Jack said quietly, his voice barely a whisper. Emma nodded. "It's the next part of the journey." With a deep breath, she stepped forward, her hand reaching out to touch the cool surface of the arch. The moment her fingers made contact, the air seemed to crackle with energy. The glowstones around them flickered and brightened, and the cavern itself seemed to exhale a sigh of ancient recognition. The stone beneath her fingers was warm now, and the symbols on the archway began to glow with a soft, golden light. As Emma's hand passed over the arch, the stone seemed to shift, moving in response to her touch, as if unlocking something hidden within. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, and the archway swung open with a low rumble, revealing a hidden chamber beyond. A burst of light rushed out, blinding them for a moment, and when their eyes adjusted, they found themselves standing in the heart of the glowstone cavern. The chamber they had entered was unlike anything they had seen before. The walls were covered in more glowstones, but these were different. They were larger, and their light wasn't just a soft glow. It shone with an intense brilliance, lighting up the cavern with a blinding radiance. In the center of the chamber stood a massive stone pedestal, bathed in the glow of the stones, and atop the pedestal rested a single, radiant gem. The gem was unlike anything they had ever seen. It was large, nearly the size of Emma's fist, and it glowed with a pure, white light. As she stared at it, she felt an overwhelming pull, as if the gem was calling to her, inviting her to take it. "What is that?" Jack asked, his voice filled with awe and reverence. "I don't know," Emma replied, her heart pounding in her chest. "But I think it's the key to unlocking everything." She took a step forward, her hand reaching out toward the gem. The moment her fingers brushed against the cool surface, the entire cavern seemed to come alive. The glowstones around them pulsed in unison, their light intensifying until it was almost blinding. The ground trembled again, and for a moment, Emma thought the entire cavern might collapse. But then, just as quickly as the light had flared, it settled, and the cavern was bathed in a soft, peaceful glow. The gem in Emma's hand seemed to hum with power, resonating with something deep inside her. She held the gem tightly, feeling the energy flow through her fingertips. It was as if the cavern itself had given her its blessing, its power. The key was now in her possession. "We've found it," Emma whispered, her voice filled with awe. "This is the answer we've been searching for." But just as they began to process the enormity of what they had discovered, a voice echoed through the cavern, deep and ancient, like a whisper carried on the wind. "You have found the heart of the cavern, but the journey is far from over. The gem you hold is not just a key, but a test. What you unlock here will shape the future, and the past is always watching." The voice faded as quickly as it had come, leaving Emma and Jack in stunned silence. They glanced at each other, the weight of the words sinking in. The gem was only the beginning. The path ahead was still shrouded in mystery, and the challenges they faced were far from over. But Emma felt a surge of determination. They were ready for whatever came next. With the glowstone gem in her hand, she turned to Jack, a new resolve in her eyes. "Let's move forward. We can't stop now." And so, with the gem's light guiding them, they stepped deeper into the cavern, ready to face whatever tests and mysteries awaited them. The glowstone gem in Emma's hand pulsed with a steady, rhythmic beat, like the heartbeat of the cavern itself. Its radiant light illuminated their path as they ventured deeper into the cavern's vast interior. The walls around them shimmered, their intricate patterns seeming to shift and change, as if the stone itself was alive, watching them with quiet, knowing eyes. Jack walked beside Emma, his gaze fixed on the glowing gem in her palm. "What do you think the Dream Keeper is?" The voice said we were unlocking something important. "Do you think it's like the guardian of this place?" Emma could feel the weight of the gem as if it held the answers to all their questions. "I don't know, but we've come too far to turn back now." The voice spoke of a test, but it didn't say what kind. Maybe the Dream Keeper is part of that test. They continued to move forward, their footsteps echoing in the silence of the cavern. As they walked, the air grew warmer, the faint glow of the stone brightening as they drew closer to their destination. The cavern narrowed, the walls pressing in on them until they reached a circular chamber, its center dominated by a massive, ancient tree. The tree's bark was silver, its leaves shimmering with a soft, ethereal glow, as though they were woven from light itself. At the base of the tree stood a figure cloaked in deep indigo, its face hidden by a hood. A faint, otherworldly presence emanated from the figure, and as Emma and Jack approached, the figure turned to face them, as if it had been expecting them all along. "You've come," the figure said in a voice that was both soothing and distant, like a soft breeze on a calm night. It was neither male nor female, but rather a blend of both, its tone timeless, ageless. Emma's heart raced as she stepped forward. "Are you the Dream Keeper?" she asked, her voice filled with awe. The figure nodded slowly, its movements graceful and deliberate. I am. And you have come seeking answers. The gem you hold is a key, yes. But it is also a mirror. It reflects the truth of those who seek it. What you choose to do with it will determine the course of your future and of this world. Jack frowned, glancing at Emma. What does that mean? What future? What world? The dreamkeeper's eyes, now visible beneath the hood, were deep pools of light, like twin stars that seemed to see into the very core of their beings. The future of this world is bound to your choices. The key you hold is part of a greater balance, a force that must be guided with wisdom. The question you must answer is not what is the key, but what is it for? Emma felt a shiver run down her spine as the weight of the words settled into her mind. The gem, the cavern, the journey, they were all part of something far greater than she had realized. The dreamkeeper extended a hand toward the tree, and with a soft whisper of movement, the tree's leaves rustled as though responding to an unseen wind. Slowly, the branches of the tree parted, revealing a glowing pool of water beneath it. The water shimmered with an iridescent light, swirling as if it contained the essence of dreams themselves. This is the pool of reflections, the dreamkeeper explained. It is where the truth of all things lies. Here, you will see what you need to understand, what you must learn before you can continue your journey. But be warned, what you see in the pool may not always be what you expect. It will show you what you need to see, not what you want to see. Emma and Jack exchanged a look, both uncertain but compelled by the gravity of the moment. Slowly, they approached the pool, the air thick with anticipation. Emma could feel the pull of the water, its shimmering surface beckoning them forward. The dreamkeeper stepped aside, allowing them to reach the edge of the pool. Look into it, the figure instructed. But be prepared. The reflection will reveal truths that may be difficult to bear. Emma hesitated, her heart pounding in her chest. She took a deep breath and slowly lowered her gaze to the water. The surface rippled, and the glowstones in her hand dimmed for a moment, as if the pool itself was absorbing their light. At first, the pool appeared still, reflecting only their faces, distorted slightly by the movement of the water. But then, the reflection began to change. The water seemed to come alive, swirling and shifting, until it formed an image before them. Emma gasped as she saw herself, but not as she was now. In the vision, she was older, standing before a grand, ancient city. The sky was dark, and a storm raged overhead, lightning striking the tall towers in the distance. The city seemed to be crumbling, its walls cracked and broken, as if it had been abandoned for centuries. She saw herself holding the glowstone gem, but it was dark now, its light fading. She could feel the weight of it in her hands, the responsibility, the burden of a decision she had yet to make. Behind her, shadowy figures moved in the gloom, watching her with cold eyes. The city, once full of life, was now a place of ruin. Is this my future? Emma whispered, her voice trembling. Is this what happens if I fail? The image in the pool shifted again, this time revealing Jack. He was standing by her side, but his face was filled with anguish, as though he had made a choice he couldn't undo. His eyes were wide with regret, and there was a shadow of sorrow in his expression that Emma had never seen before. Jack, Emma whispered, her heart aching. What does this mean? Before she could speak further, the pool shimmered once more, and the image disappeared, leaving only the calm surface of the water. The vision had ended. Do you understand now? The dreamkeeper's voice asked, gentle yet firm. The future you saw is not set in stone. It is shaped by your choices. The gem you hold is a guide, but it is you who must decide what path to take. Emma stepped back, her heart heavy with the weight of the vision she had seen. She glanced at Jack, whose face mirrored the confusion and uncertainty she felt. I don't know if I can do this, Emma admitted softly. I don't know if I'm strong enough to make the right choice. The dreamkeeper's gaze softened. You do not need to be strong all the time, nor certain of every step. You only need to be true to yourself. The choices you face will be difficult, but remember, you are not alone. You have each other, and together, you will find the path. The dreamkeeper's words were a comfort, but they also left Emma with more questions than answers. The journey ahead was still unclear, but one thing was certain, the future was in their hands, and the key to shaping it was buried deep within the choices they would make. With the dreamkeeper's blessing, Emma and Jack stood together, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The road would not be easy, but as long as they held the gem, they would continue to move forward, one step at a time. And perhaps, just perhaps, they would unlock the truth they so desperately sought. The air was cool, the soft glow of the glowstone gem casting a serene light over Emma and Jack as they left the dreamkeeper behind. They had learned much from the cryptic visions in the pool of reflections, but now, the weight of those visions hung over them like a heavy fog. The future they had glimpsed seemed uncertain, and yet they knew one thing for certain, their journey was far from over. The cavern began to narrow, the walls pressing in tighter, guiding them along a winding path. The gentle hum of the glowstones filled the air, an eerie lullaby that seemed to push them forward, urging them onward into the unknown. The deeper they traveled, the quieter the cavern became, until the silence was almost suffocating. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they emerged into a new world, an open valley, bathed in the soft light of the setting sun. In front of them stood a dense forest, its trees towering and twisted, their branches reaching up to the sky like gnarled fingers. Between the trees, they could just make out the outline of a village, nestled in the heart of the forest. There it is, Emma murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. The lost village. Jack's gaze followed hers, his brow furrowing. I didn't expect to find a village out here. It looks abandoned. Emma nodded, her heart racing. She had heard stories of a village lost to time, its people gone without a trace, swallowed up by the forest. The villagers had been said to have possessed knowledge of ancient magic, but their secrets had remained locked away, buried beneath layers of myth and mystery. Now, here it was, right in front of them, shrouded in a veil of silence. With a shared glance, they stepped forward into the forest. The trees parted as they walked, as though the forest itself was welcoming them, guiding them toward the village. The deeper they ventured, the more the air seemed to hum with a strange energy, a quiet pulse that vibrated through the earth beneath their feet. As they approached the village, they could see that the buildings were in disrepair. Roofs had collapsed, and vines had overtaken the walls, creeping through the cracks like fingers of the forest, reclaiming what was once its own. Despite the decay, there was an undeniable beauty to the place, a haunting sort of beauty, like a forgotten dream that still lingered in the corners of the mind. "Is anyone here?" Jack called out, his voice echoing through the empty streets. There was no answer. The village was eerily still, as if time itself had forgotten this place. But as they ventured deeper into the heart of the village, something began to stir. A soft rustling in the trees, a faint whisper on the wind. Emma felt it before she saw it. The village was not as empty as it appeared. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the edge of the village square, standing beneath the shadow of a tall, crumbling tower. The figure was cloaked in tattered robes, and their face was hidden beneath the hood. Emma's heart skipped a beat. This was no ordinary villager. The figure stepped forward, moving with an eerie grace, and as they did, the glowstone gem in Emma's hand flickered, its light dimming for a brief moment. The figure's presence seemed to suppress the light, as if the very air around them was charged with something ancient and powerful. "You have come," the figure said, its voice low and raspy, as though it had not spoken in centuries. "The key-bearer and the seeker. The ones who will awaken what has been forgotten." Emma took a cautious step forward. "Who are you?" The figure raised a hand, and as it did, the ground beneath their feet trembled slightly. The village square seemed to come alive, as if responding to the figure's presence. The once dormant buildings creaked and groaned, as though waking from a long slumber. "I am the guardian of the lost village," the figure said. "I protect the secrets of this place, the knowledge that was buried with its people. You have come for a reason, but do not think it is a simple one. The village was lost for a purpose. The magic that once flourished here has been sealed away, and only those worthy may uncover its secrets." Jack exchanged a wary glance with Emma. "We don't want to cause any harm. We're just trying to understand. We need to know more about the gem and the path ahead." The guardian lowered its hood, revealing an ancient face, lined with age and wisdom. Its eyes were pale, almost glowing, and they seemed to pierce through Emma's very soul. "You seek the knowledge of the village," the guardian said. "But you must understand, knowledge is not always a gift. It is a burden, one that only the brave can bear. The people of this village sought the same knowledge you now desire. They were consumed by it, and in their quest for power, they lost everything. Emma's pulse quickened. What happened to them? Where are they? The guardian's eyes darkened. They are gone. But their spirits remain, bound to this place. The village was never truly abandoned. The echoes of its people linger, waiting for the right moment to be freed. Emma stepped forward, her voice trembling with curiosity and fear. And how do we free them? The guardian's expression softened, and it gestured toward the village's central square. At the center stood an ancient stone well, its surface covered in moss and vines. It looked like any other well, but Emma could feel a strange energy radiating from it, as if it were the heart of the village itself. You must face the well, the guardian said. The well is the source of the village's power, and it holds the key to the knowledge you seek. But be warned, the well does not give its gifts freely. It tests all who seek its power. To unlock its secrets, you must prove your worth. The trials of the well are not for the faint of heart. Emma felt a sense of foreboding, but also a deep, burning desire to uncover the truth. She had come this far. The village, the lost knowledge, the gem, everything was leading to this moment. We're ready, she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest. The guardian nodded solemnly. Very well. But remember, the path you choose will shape not only your future, but the fate of this village as well. Enter the well, and you may learn what you seek. But the cost of knowledge is always great. With those final words, the guardian stepped back into the shadows, leaving Emma and Jack alone in the village square. The well loomed before them, its surface dark and mysterious, calling them forward. Emma reached out to take Jack's hand. Together, they stepped toward the well, ready to face whatever trials awaited them within its depths. The secrets of the lost village were within their grasp, and nothing would stop them from uncovering the truth. The air around Emma and Jack grew thick, almost suffocating, as they stood before the ancient well in the heart of the lost village. The guardian's warning echoed in their minds, the cost of knowledge is always great. Yet, neither of them hesitated. The path they had chosen, the journey they had begun, was leading them here, to the well that pulsed with ancient energy. The ground beneath their feet hummed with a strange vibration as they stepped closer. The well's surface was covered in layers of moss, and the stones around it were slick with age and moisture. The shadows of the surrounding village stretched long, cast by the waning light of the day, and as they approached the well, a thick fog began to creep in, swirling around them like an invisible tide. This place, Jack murmured, his voice tinged with unease. It feels different now. Like the village is watching us. Emma didn't reply immediately. She could feel it too, the weight of the place, the sense that they were being observed by unseen eyes. The village had been abandoned for so long, yet its very presence seemed alive, as though the spirits of the villagers lingered in every corner, waiting for something to happen. The fog thickened, obscuring the path behind them. The village square, once clear, was now a ghostly landscape. The buildings seemed to fade into the mist, their outlines becoming more indistinct. The fog swirled around the well like a living thing, as if it was trying to keep them from moving forward. "Are we sure about this?" Jack asked, his voice barely a whisper. "This feels wrong." Emma turned to him, her eyes filled with determination. "We've come this far, Jack. We can't stop now." She reached out and placed her hand on the well's stone edge. It was cold to the touch, sending a shiver up her spine. As her fingers brushed the surface, a deep, resonant sound filled the air, a low hum, like a heartbeat, coming from within the well itself. Suddenly, the fog around them began to swirl faster, and a shape began to materialize in the distance. At first, it was nothing more than a faint silhouette, a shadow moving through the mist. But as it drew closer, the form took shape, a tall figure, draped in tattered robes, its face obscured by a dark hood. Emma felt a chill run through her as the figure stepped forward, emerging from the mist. It was like the fog itself had given birth to this presence, as though the very air was cloaking it in darkness. Who are you?" Emma asked, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to remain calm. The figure did not respond immediately. Instead, it raised its hand slowly, and the fog around them thickened, the temperature dropping sharply. The air felt heavy with something ancient, something old and forgotten. Then, in a voice that was both hollow and commanding, the figure spoke. "You have come to the well, seeking the secrets of the village. But be warned, for what lies within is not meant for the faint-hearted. To learn the truth, you must face the shadows of your own soul." The figure's words echoed in the fog, and Emma felt a shiver of dread coil in her chest. Shadows of your own soul. What did that mean? Jack stepped closer to Emma, his voice barely audible. "What does it want from us? What is this thing?" Emma glanced at him, her heart pounding. I think it's trying to stop us from uncovering the truth. It doesn't want us to face what's inside the well." The figure raised its hand once more, and with a flick of its wrist, the fog parted, revealing a dark opening in the ground, an entrance to a passage beneath the well. "Enter," the figure commanded. "But remember, the well does not offer its gifts freely. The shadows will test you. Only those who can face their darkest fears will be granted what they seek. If you falter, if you turn away, you will be lost forever in the fog, forgotten by time." Emma stood frozen for a moment, staring into the darkness of the passage. The shadows around her seemed to grow deeper, more oppressive. But she knew this was the only way forward. They had to go inside. They had no choice. She turned to Jack, her voice steady despite the fear that gripped her heart. "We have to do this. We have to face whatever's inside." Jack swallowed hard, his face pale. "You're right. We can't turn back now." Together, they stepped forward, entering the dark passage that led beneath the well. As they descended, the fog seemed to follow them, curling around their ankles like tendrils of smoke. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The air felt thick, as if the very space around them was closing in, suffocating them with its weight. The passage was narrow, the walls smooth and unyielding. It twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the earth. Soon, the faint light of the glowstone gem seemed to dim, swallowed by the darkness. The further they went, the more the shadows seemed to take shape, moving in the corners of their vision. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence, a low, guttural growl. Emma and Jack froze, their hearts pounding in their chests. The growl echoed through the passage, growing louder, closer. It was as if the shadows themselves were alive, closing in on them. "Do you hear that?" Jack whispered, his voice tense with fear. Emma nodded, her hand tightening around the glowstone gem. "Something's down here with us." The growl grew louder, and suddenly, from the darkness ahead, a figure lunged toward them. It was a shadow, a mass of swirling darkness, its form shifting and shifting as it moved toward them with terrifying speed. Emma gasped, instinctively stepping back, but the figure was already upon them. It was a formless creature, made of darkness itself, its presence suffocating. Its eyes, if they could be called eyes, gleamed with a faint, eerie light, as though it fed on fear. With a cry, Emma lifted the glowstone gem and held it before her, the light pulsing brighter in her hand. The shadow recoiled, hissing like smoke in the air. It seemed to hesitate, unsure of the light's power. "Jack, we need to fight it off," Emma shouted, her voice desperate. Jack nodded, his face filled with determination. "We'll do it together." The creature lunged again, but this time Emma raised the gem higher, the light intensifying, pushing the shadow back. The growl turned into a screech of fury as the creature recoiled, its form beginning to dissipate under the intense light. With a final hiss, the shadow vanished into the mist, leaving only the stillness of the passage behind. Emma and Jack stood panting, their hearts still racing from the encounter. "What was that?" Jack breathed, his voice shaken. "I don't know," Emma whispered, her eyes scanning the darkness around them. "But I think it was a test, a shadow of our own fear. We've got to keep moving. The well won't give us its secrets without a fight." They exchanged a silent nod, knowing that the journey ahead would only grow more dangerous. The path was not only one of physical trials, but of confronting the darkness within themselves. With the glowstone gem lighting their way, Emma and Jack pressed on into the depths, determined to face whatever shadows awaited them, and to uncover the truth that lay hidden beneath the earth. The oppressive darkness that had filled the passage behind them slowly began to fade as Emma and Jack made their way deeper into the labyrinth beneath the well. The air around them seemed to grow still, the heavy fog lifting just enough to allow them to breathe more freely. Yet, despite the quiet, the weight of the trials they had faced so far still clung to them, as if the shadows they had encountered were only the beginning of what lay ahead. As they continued onward, the walls of the tunnel began to change. The smooth stone, once cold and unyielding, now gave way to intricate carvings, as though the stone itself was telling a story of ancient magic, forgotten kingdoms, and long-lost dreams. The deeper they traveled, the more the carvings seemed to come alive, flickering in the dim light of the glowstone gem, creating the illusion that the figures were moving, whispering secrets long buried in the past. The passage eventually opened into a vast cavern, and as they stepped into the wide space, Emma gasped. Before them stood a majestic sight, a bridge, suspended high above a chasm that stretched endlessly below. The bridge was made of shimmering crystal, its surface glinting in the soft light that emanated from nowhere in particular. The stone beneath their feet was smooth and warm, and the air felt lighter, filled with an almost palpable sense of hope. "It's beautiful," Jack whispered, awe in his voice. The bridge stretched across the chasm, leading toward a distant, mist-shrouded tower that seemed to be floating just beyond the horizon. A soft breeze blew from the direction of the tower, carrying with it the faint scent of flowers, but there was something strange about the air. It felt charged, almost as if the bridge itself was alive, waiting for something. As Emma and Jack stepped closer to the edge of the chasm, a voice, soft and melodic, echoed from somewhere in the distance. "The Bridge of Wishes," it whispered, as though the bridge itself had a voice, one that resonated with ancient wisdom. "Cross, if you dare, and you shall be granted your deepest desire. But beware, for wishes come at a price." Emma's heart skipped a beat at the voice's words. The Bridge of Wishes? It seemed too good to be true, a promise of something they had both longed for. But something in the tone of the voice, the warning it carried, made her pause. There was always a cost, wasn't there? She had learned that much in their journey. Jack, sensing her hesitation, turned to her. "Do you think it's real? I mean, a bridge that grants wishes? It sounds too good to be true." Emma's grip on the glowstone gem tightened. She could feel its power pulsing in her hand, as if it too were aware of the bridge ahead. "I don't know," she said, her voice filled with doubt. "But I think we should be careful. Nothing here is ever as simple as it seems." Before Jack could respond, the voice returned, more insistent this time. "Do not fear, travelers. The bridge is here to grant you what you seek. It only asks that you lay down your heart's truest wish. What you desire most will be yours." The words felt like a song, sweet and tempting, like an invitation to something better, something more than they had ever hoped for. The allure of the bridge was strong, and for a moment, Emma felt the pull of it deep in her chest. There were so many things she wanted, answers about the village, about the lost magic, about the purpose of their journey. And yet, what would the cost be? She couldn't shake the nagging feeling that the price might be more than they could afford. "I don't trust it," she said quietly, shaking her head. "This bridge, this voice, "It's all too easy. We've faced challenges before, and we've gotten through them. This feels like a shortcut, and we can't take those. Not here." Jack looked down at the bridge, his eyes narrowing as he tried to make sense of it. "Maybe you're right. But what if it's real? What if it could give us the answers we're searching for? The magic, the truth about the villagers, everything." Emma glanced back toward the path they had come from, the dark tunnel behind them now almost invisible in the distance. The passage had been long, the trials within it taxing, but they had endured. And this bridge was an unknown, a temptation that could lead them astray. "We don't know what's on the other side," Emma said firmly. "We've made it this far on our own. Let's not lose ourselves in promises we don't understand." The voice on the wind seemed to sense their resistance, for it grew softer, almost coaxing. "Every wish is worth the price it asks. Every desire, no matter how small, has its cost. Step onto the bridge, and you will find that which you have always wanted." The air around them seemed to vibrate, the faintest hint of magic crackling in the atmosphere. Emma could feel the energy drawing her in, urging her to take that first step onto the bridge. But she resisted, pulling herself back from the edge. "This is where we have to choose, Jack," she said softly. "Do we trust in the journey, or do we trust in the shortcut?" For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of their breathing and the faint hum of the glowstone. Finally, Jack sighed, the tension in his shoulders easing. "You're right," he said, his voice steady. "We've faced so much already. If we take the easy way now, what have we really learned? What would we be sacrificing?" Emma nodded, relief flooding through her. "We'll make our own path. We always have." Together, they turned away from the bridge, its shimmering surface reflecting the faintest glimmer of the last light of day. As they walked back toward the passage that had brought them here, the voice on the wind faded, leaving only the faintest whisper behind. It was as if the bridge itself had acknowledged their decision, its promise still hanging in the air like a distant memory. And as they moved farther away from the Bridge of Wishes, Emma felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. The road ahead might be long, and the challenges would only grow greater, but they would face them on their terms, not through shortcuts or easy answers. The fog around them began to dissipate as they continued their journey, and ahead of them, the path grew clearer. Whatever awaited them on the other side of the chasm, Emma and Jack knew they had made the right choice. They would uncover the truth, no matter what it took. The path ahead grew quieter as Emma and Jack continued their journey, leaving the shimmering Bridge of Wishes behind. The deep chasm, with its beckoning promises of instant answers, felt like a distant memory now, fading in the haze of their decision. The air had grown cooler, and the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze filled the space between them, a soothing reminder that they were still on the right path. But the deeper they went, the more the landscape around them began to change. The tunnel they were following gradually opened up into a vast open space, and as Emma stepped into the clearing, she gasped. Before them stretched a breathtaking sight, a garden, but not just any garden. This was a garden that seemed to bloom with the very essence of night itself. The sky above was a dark, velvety blue, dotted with countless stars. The moon hung low, casting a silver glow that shimmered like liquid light across the landscape. The garden was alive with flowers that glowed softly, their petals shimmering in hues of silver, lavender, and deep indigo. The plants were unlike anything Emma had ever seen, their forms delicate and ethereal, as if they had been sculpted from the starlight itself. "This place," Jack breathed, his voice full of wonder. "It's beautiful." Emma could barely find the words to describe what she saw. It was as if they had stepped into a dream, a world where night and nature were intertwined in perfect harmony. The air was thick with the scent of flowers, sweet and heady, but there was something else, too, something deeper in the fragrance. It was the scent of magic, of ancient power that pulsed through the earth beneath their feet. The path they had been walking on seemed to dissolve into the garden, the dirt beneath their feet turning to soft moss. The trees around them were tall and slender, their trunks wrapped in vines of glowing ivy that twinkled like stars. Every step they took felt like they were walking deeper into the heart of something ancient and alive. As they ventured farther into the garden, they noticed something unusual. There were no sounds. The breeze that had been with them on the journey so far had stilled, and the usual nighttime noises, crickets chirping, the rustling of leaves, were absent. The garden was a place of perfect stillness, where time seemed to slow down, and the only thing that seemed to matter was the beauty surrounding them. Emma's gaze wandered, and she saw something that made her stop in her tracks. In the center of the garden stood a large, elegant fountain, its surface glowing with a pale, iridescent light. At first, she thought it was just a trick of the moonlight, but as she stepped closer, she realized the light was coming from the water itself. It was as though the fountain was not just holding water, but something more, something alive. "What is this place?" Emma whispered, stepping forward cautiously. Jack was beside her now, his eyes wide as he took in the sight. "I don't know, but it feels like we've stumbled upon something sacred." The fountain's surface rippled gently, as if in response to their presence. As Emma and Jack watched, a figure slowly materialized from the mist that hung above the water. It was a woman, tall and graceful, her long hair flowing like silver tendrils of light. She wore a gown that shimmered like the stars above, and her eyes, when they met Emma's, held a quiet, knowing wisdom. "Welcome to the night garden," the woman's voice was soft, like a lullaby carried on the wind. "This is a place where the wishes of the heart are nurtured, and the deepest secrets of the soul are revealed." Emma took a step back, unsure whether she was dreaming or standing in the presence of something far beyond her understanding. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling despite her efforts to remain calm. The woman smiled gently, her eyes filled with warmth. "I am the guardian of the night garden. I have watched over this place for eons, protecting the balance between the dreams of the world and the reality you live in. The garden exists between the realms of sleep and wakefulness, where all who seek answers may come. Seek answers? Jack asked, his voice cautious. But we're not here to ask for anything. We're just trying to find the truth about the village, about the magic that has been lost. The guardian nodded, understanding in her eyes. I know why you have come. The village you seek to understand is connected to this garden, and to the magic that once flowed freely through the land. But be warned, knowledge, like the beauty of the night, can be both a gift and a curse. Some answers are not meant to be uncovered. Emma's heart sank as the guardian's words echoed in the stillness of the garden. Was she warning them to turn back? Was there a danger in seeking the truth? You have already crossed paths with the darkness, the guardian continued, and yet you have chosen to press on. But every journey, especially one that seeks the truth of the past, brings its own burdens. Are you prepared to carry the weight of what you will learn? Emma glanced at Jack, her mind racing. They had already faced so many challenges, endured so much, and yet the garden, with its beauty and tranquility, felt like a place of refuge. But the guardian's words weighed heavily on her. I think we have to know, Emma said quietly. We can't go back. We've already chosen this path. The guardian's gaze softened, and she stepped closer to them. Very well. The night garden will show you what you seek, but remember, answers come at a price. You must be willing to give something of yourself in return. As she spoke, the fountain began to glow brighter, the water rippling in a dance of light. The air around them shimmered, and Emma felt a strange tug at her heart, as if the garden itself was drawing her in, urging her to come closer. Without thinking, Emma stepped forward, and the guardian extended her hand, a gentle invitation. Come, the guardian said, her voice like a melody. Let the garden reveal what lies hidden in the depths of your soul. With a mixture of hesitation and determination, Emma took the guardian's hand, feeling a strange warmth spread through her palm. The moment their hands touched, the garden seemed to come alive, its flowers swaying, the stars in the sky twinkling more brightly, the fountain's glow becoming almost blinding. The world around them began to shift, and Emma felt herself being pulled into the very heart of the garden's magic. In an instant, everything went silent. The world seemed to fade away, leaving only Emma and Jack standing in the center of the garden, surrounded by the glowing beauty of the night. What would they learn here? And what would they have to sacrifice in return for the truth? The answers were just beyond their reach, waiting to be discovered in the heart of the night garden. The air around Emma and Jack grew still, as though the very fabric of time had momentarily paused. The warmth that had spread through Emma's hand when she grasped the guardian's was now fading, leaving behind a faint hum that resonated deep in her chest. The garden shimmered with an ethereal glow, and though they stood in the same place, everything felt different, alive, yet suspended in an almost dreamlike state. A soft wind stirred the flowers around them, but there was no movement in the trees. The stars above, still bright in the night sky, seemed to shift slightly, as though they were watching them, waiting for something. Emma glanced around, her heart thudding in her chest, and the guardian's soft, melodic voice broke the silence once more. "The garden has shown you what was hidden," the guardian said, her tone gentle but knowing. "But there are forces beyond this place, forces that guard the boundaries between the realms. You are not the only one seeking the truth, and not all truths are meant to be discovered by mortal hands." Emma and Jack exchanged a glance. They had learned so much in the garden, yet there was something in the guardian's words that unsettled them, a sense that they had only begun to scratch the surface of something much larger, and much more dangerous, than they had realized. "Who are these forces?" Jack asked, his voice tinged with concern. "What do you mean, not all truths are meant to be discovered?" The guardian's expression softened. "There are those who guard the gateways to other realms, the realms of dreams and nightmares, of memory and prophecy. These realms are not for the unprepared, and the guardians of these gates are merciless. They will stop at nothing to protect the balance between worlds." The ground beneath their feet trembled slightly, as though the very earth was responding to her words. Emma felt a shiver run down her spine. The realization dawned on her that their journey was far from over. The gate, the key to unlocking the lost magic of the village, was closer than ever, but so too were the dangers. "There is a gate ahead, one that leads to the heart of all things, where the origins of the magic you seek are written in the stars," the guardian continued, her voice echoing softly through the night air. "But it is not a gate you can simply walk through. The guardians of that gate will test your hearts, your will, and your very souls. Only those who are worthy may pass." Emma swallowed hard. "How do we become worthy?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. The guardian's eyes held a flicker of sadness, as though she knew the answer would not be easy. "By facing your deepest fears and confronting the darkness within you. The gate is not simply a physical barrier, it is a reflection of who you are, what you seek, and what you are willing to sacrifice. You must be prepared to let go of what you hold most dear, for only then will you be able to unlock the true magic." Jack looked at Emma, his expression serious. "We've already given so much of ourselves. How much more can we possibly sacrifice?" The guardian stepped forward, her form glowing with an inner light. "The path ahead is a path of transformation. The gate does not only guard what you seek, it reveals what you must become. You are no longer the same as you were when you first set foot on this journey. You will have to confront the truth of your past, your desires, and your fears." Suddenly, a distant rumble echoed through the garden, and the ground shook again, this time more violently. The fountain, once calm and serene, rippled as if it too were being pulled into some unseen force. The sky above darkened, and the stars flickered as if struggling to hold on to their place in the heavens. Emma and Jack turned toward the garden's edge, where a dark shadow seemed to be creeping closer, moving with a strange, almost unnatural speed. The flowers that had glowed so brightly now dimmed, their colors fading as the shadows stretched across the garden like a creeping fog. A low, guttural voice emanated from the shadow, sending chills down their spines. "The time has come, travelers. The guardians are awakening. The gate of truth awaits, but those who seek it must prove their worth." From within the shadow emerged figures, tall and cloaked, their features hidden in the darkness. The guardians of the gate. They moved with an eerie grace, their presence commanding and powerful. Their eyes glowed faintly beneath their hoods, and their voices echoed as if coming from all directions at once. "We are the guardians of the gate," one of them intoned, their voice deep and resonant. "You have entered the night garden, but to pass beyond it, you must first prove your intentions. Only those who are worthy of the truth may cross the threshold." Emma stepped forward, her heart pounding. She could feel the weight of their gaze, the pressure of the moment building around her. "What do we have to do?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. The guardian closest to them stepped forward, his presence overwhelming. "You must answer a question, one that will reveal the truth of your hearts. There is no escaping it, no second chances. The answer you give will determine whether you are allowed to proceed, or if you will remain here, lost in the shadows forever." Emma glanced at Jack, and he nodded, his face set with determination. Together, they had already made it this far, and they would face whatever came next as they always had, together. The guardian spoke again, his voice like the rustle of leaves in a storm. "What is it that you seek above all else? The one thing that drives you to continue, no matter the cost?" Emma's heart skipped a beat. The question was simple, yet impossible to answer. She had already sacrificed so much. What was it that she truly wanted? What was the one thing that would drive her to face whatever came next, to cross the threshold of the gate of truth? Jack turned to her, his eyes steady. "We've come this far. Whatever it is, we'll face it together." Emma took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle upon her shoulders. The answer was clearer now. It was not just about the village, not just about finding the lost magic. It was about understanding, about peace, and about reclaiming the future they had been denied. And with that understanding, she finally spoke. "We seek the truth," she said, her voice firm. "We seek the truth, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who has been lost in the shadows." The guardians fell silent, their glowing eyes fixed on Emma and Jack. The tension in the air was palpable, as though the very world was holding its breath. The shadows shifted, the darkness retreating, and the faint glow of the garden's flowers began to return. The guardian who had spoken nodded slowly, his gaze approving. "You have chosen wisely, travelers. The truth you seek is not an easy path, but you are worthy to walk it." With that, the guardians stepped aside, their cloaks swirling like the night itself. The path ahead was now clear, and the gate they had longed for was within reach. The gate of truth stood before them, ready to reveal what they had sought since the beginning of their journey. But Emma and Jack knew that whatever lay beyond that gate, they would face it together. Whatever it took, they would uncover the truth, and nothing would stand in their way. The air was thick with anticipation as Emma and Jack stepped forward, their eyes fixed on the gate of truth, which loomed ahead of them like a doorway between worlds. The guardians, their dark forms retreating into the mist, had given them the key to move forward, but they were not alone. A strange energy pulsed in the air, thick with magic and the weight of something ancient. It felt as if the very ground beneath them was alive, responding to their presence. The gate, which had seemed so distant moments before, now appeared close enough to touch. But as they approached, something unexpected happened. The space before them began to shift. What had been a solid structure now seemed to melt away, revealing something far more intricate. Before their eyes, the land around them transformed. The lush night garden faded into the background, replaced by a vast, open sky, streaked with shimmering constellations. Below them, a soft golden light emanated from an unknown source, casting an ethereal glow on everything it touched. But the most startling transformation was what appeared in front of them, an enormous, celestial carousel, spinning lazily in the night sky. The carousel, unlike anything Emma or Jack had ever seen, was suspended in the air, its structure delicate yet grand. Each of its many golden pillars reached upward like slender towers, stretching high into the sky and supporting the rotating platform. The platform itself was lined with beautiful, glowing horses, each one crafted from stardust and moonlight. They shimmered and twinkled, their forms constantly shifting and changing in shape, like creatures born from the very constellations above. As the carousel spun, its movement was almost hypnotic, graceful and slow, as if time itself was bending to its rhythm. The sound was faint but calming, a soft, musical hum that echoed through the air like the song of the cosmos. It was as if the carousel existed in the space between time and eternity, a bridge between the earthly realm and the far-off stars. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She had read about celestial phenomena, but nothing had prepared her for this. This was no mere vision or illusion. This was real, and it was waiting for them. "Jack, do you see that?" Emma whispered, her voice filled with awe. Jack, too, stood frozen in place, his eyes wide. "I've never seen anything like it." "What is it?" Before Emma could respond, a voice spoke from above them, soft and melodic, as if carried by the wind itself. "This is the celestial carousel," the voice said. "It is the threshold between the realms, the place where your journey and your destiny will intersect. The gate you seek lies within this carousel, but to reach it, you must ride and face the trials of the stars." Emma and Jack exchanged a glance, uncertainty flooding their minds. "Trials?" Jack repeated. "What kind of trials?" The voice was gentle but firm. The carousel is not just a bridge between worlds, it is a mirror of your soul, a reflection of your heart's deepest desires and fears. To pass through the gate, you must confront your innermost truths. Each ride on the celestial horses will reveal something hidden within you, something you must face in order to move forward. The platform of the carousel shifted slightly, as if inviting them to climb aboard. The golden horses now beckoned, their luminous eyes glowing like beacons in the night. As Emma took a step forward, the ground beneath her feet seemed to vanish, replaced by a soft, weightless sensation. Jack reached for her hand instinctively, and together they moved toward the nearest horse. It was unlike any horse they had ever imagined. Its form was a blend of light and stardust, a creature both solid and ethereal. Its mane rippled like the fabric of the night sky, and its body shimmered with the colors of the cosmos, deep blues, purples, and silvers, each changing like the stars themselves. Its eyes, wide and knowing, fixed on Emma as she approached. Without a word, Emma mounted the horse, Jack following close behind. The moment they did, the carousel began to spin faster, the stars above them swirling into a kaleidoscope of light. The gentle hum of the music grew louder, filling the air with its otherworldly melody. The ground beneath them became distant, and the carousel rose higher into the sky, taking them with it. As the ride began, the landscape shifted, and Emma suddenly found herself standing alone in a vast, empty desert, the sky above burning with an eerie, orange glow. She turned to see Jack beside her, but his form seemed distant, hazy, like a mirage in the heat. Her heart began to race. "This is the first trial," the voice whispered again, now echoing in the vast emptiness. "Face your past, and all that you have left behind." The ground beneath her feet seemed to tremble, and Emma's mind flashed to memories she had long tried to forget. The echoes of her childhood, the days before the tragedy that had torn her family apart, came rushing back. She saw her parents' faces, smiling, loving, whole. She saw the life they had before everything changed. But then, the vision shifted. The smile on her mother's face vanished, replaced by a sorrowful expression. The laughter that once filled her home became a distant memory, replaced by silence and heartbreak. Emma stepped backward, her breath quickening. The pain of those memories, the anger, the confusion, the loss, surged within her. This was the moment she had always feared, the moment she would have to face the truth of her past. "You cannot move forward until you reconcile with this part of you," the voice said softly. "The past shapes who you are, but it does not define you. It is only by embracing it that you will be free." Emma's chest tightened as the memories grew stronger, the feelings of abandonment and grief almost overwhelming. But then, in the midst of the chaos, she heard a soft whisper, Jack's voice, calling her name. "Emma," he said, his voice steady and calm. "You're not alone in this." She turned to him, her eyes clouded with tears. Jack's form had solidified now, and he stood beside her, his hand reaching out to her. "It's okay," he said. We can face this together. We've already come so far." In that moment, Emma understood. The pain of her past would never disappear completely, but it no longer had to control her. She had the strength to move forward, to heal, and to accept the things she could not change. With Jack by her side, she felt a surge of peace, a quiet, yet powerful, realization that the past was a part of her, but it no longer defined her future. The desert around them began to fade, the sky shifting back to its starry expanse. The carousel spun once more, and they were gently lifted into the air, the celestial horses rising higher with each passing moment. Emma closed her eyes, taking a deep, steadying breath. The first trial was over. But she knew that there were more to come. The carousel continued its journey, and Emma and Jack were ready. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. As the celestial carousel slowed, its golden horses gently bringing Emma and Jack back to the ground, they felt a shift in the air. The stars above them dimmed slightly, as if acknowledging the completion of the first trial. The comforting hum of the carousel softened to a quiet murmur, like a lullaby drifting into the distance. The ride had brought them closer to the truth they sought, but the journey was far from over. They could feel it in the air. Something new awaited them. The carousel's platform dissolved into a cloud of shimmering light, and the space around them expanded, revealing a vast, sprawling landscape. What appeared to be a distant, mist-covered shore stretched out before them, lined with towering shelves and enormous stone pillars that seemed to reach toward the heavens. The mist rolled in thick waves, but through the haze, Emma could make out intricate stone arches, covered in ivy and adorned with shimmering symbols that pulsed with faint light. It looked like an ancient, forgotten city, its secrets concealed within the mists of time. "This place, it's like a dream," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible over the silence that had descended. Jack stood beside her, eyes scanning their surroundings, a look of awe on his face. "It feels like we're walking through history. But where are we?" Before they could venture further, the voice from the carousel, soft yet resonant, echoed in the air, as if it were a part of the very mist that surrounded them. "This is the library of memories," the voice intoned, "a place where all the forgotten stories of the world are kept, hidden in the hearts of those who once lived them. Here, the past is preserved in every book, in every corner, and every shadow. What you seek lies within the pages of these memories. But remember, every memory has a price." The mist swirled, parting before them to reveal a large stone archway, glowing with soft, golden light. As they approached, the archway seemed to beckon, the warmth inviting them into the unknown. Emma could feel the weight of its presence, the significance of the moment. She had always known that the path forward would not be easy, but this was different. This was a place where the past, her past, would come alive. As they passed through the archway, they entered a vast hall, its towering walls lined with shelves upon shelves of ancient books, their spines worn and covered in dust. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and ink, and the faint sound of pages turning echoed through the vastness, as though the library itself was alive. The ceiling above them stretched into infinity, covered in intricate murals depicting scenes from distant lands and forgotten times, faded memories of worlds long lost. Emma's gaze was drawn to the center of the room, where a massive, glowing orb hovered above an ornate pedestal. The orb pulsed with light, casting shadows on the walls, its surface shimmering with the reflections of countless memories. It was unlike anything Emma had ever seen, a beacon of knowledge and mystery, and she instinctively knew it held the answers they sought. "This is where it begins," the voice continued, reverberating through the library. "To unlock the secrets you seek, you must delve into the memories contained here. But beware, each memory comes at a cost. The more you seek, the more you may lose." Emma hesitated. The weight of the voice's words settled on her chest like a stone. She knew the journey they had embarked upon would test them, but the idea of losing something, of giving up more than they could afford, sent a ripple of unease through her. Jack stepped closer to the orb, his expression thoughtful. "How do we begin?" he asked, his voice filled with determination. The voice responded, softer this time, as though speaking directly to them. "Touch the orb. It will show you the memories you need to find, but once touched, you must follow the path it reveals. You cannot turn back, and you cannot unlearn what you discover." Emma exchanged a glance with Jack, the weight of the choice pressing down on them. The orb glowed invitingly, but something in the back of her mind warned her that the journey ahead would not be as simple as it seemed. Still, they had come this far. She stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. Reaching out, her fingers brushed against the surface of the orb, and in that moment, everything around them shifted. The walls of the library faded into a blur, and the floor beneath them seemed to melt away. Suddenly, they were no longer standing in the library. They were in a new place, familiar yet strange. The scene before them unfolded like a story from a forgotten past, and Emma found herself standing in the middle of a small, peaceful village. The streets were lined with cobblestones, and the houses, though simple, radiated warmth. Children played near a fountain, their laughter echoing in the distance, while vendors sold wares in the bustling market square. But as Emma looked closer, something felt off. The village was too perfect, too quiet. There was a stillness in the air, an unsettling calmness, as though something important was about to unfold. She glanced to her side, and there, standing at the entrance of a modest cottage, was a woman, her mother, young and full of life, smiling as she waved to Emma. Her heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just a memory. This was the memory, the moment when everything had changed, before the world had turned upside down. This was the memory of a time before the tragedy, a time when hope and happiness filled their lives. But as Emma stepped closer, the memory began to shift. The sky darkened, the village's peaceful air turning heavy with foreboding. The sounds of children's laughter faded, replaced by a distant rumble. A shadow passed over the village, blotting out the sun. People rushed about, shouting in panic, but the woman, her mother, remained motionless, as if waiting for something. "Mom?" Emma whispered, but her voice was swallowed by the growing darkness. Her mother turned to her, her face filled with sorrow and something more, a sadness that Emma had never seen before, a deep, unspoken fear. And before Emma could react, the scene began to break apart, the edges of the memory flickering like a flame about to be extinguished. "You cannot change what has already happened," the voice whispered in the air, soft yet resolute. "The past is gone, but it has shaped you into who you are. To move forward, you must accept the truth of what was, even if it hurts." Emma's heart pounded in her chest as the vision of her mother faded into the mist. She reached out, but the memory was slipping away, like sand through her fingers. Jack's voice broke through her reverie. "Emma, we can't stay here. We need to keep moving forward." With a deep breath, Emma closed her eyes, letting the memory go. As she opened them again, the library materialized around them once more, the orb now dimming in the distance. The cost of the memory had been high, but Emma knew it was a necessary part of the journey. She had faced the past, and now she could move on. There were still more memories to uncover, more truths to reveal. The library had only just begun to show them the way. Together, Emma and Jack turned toward the next chapter in their journey, ready to face whatever came next. The Library of Memories had been a place of profound revelations, but Emma and Jack knew their journey was far from over. After confronting the haunting echoes of the past, they stood in the dimming glow of the orb, their minds swirling with emotions and questions. The unsettling yet poignant vision of Emma's mother lingered in the back of her mind, a reminder of the cost of seeking the truth. The next step awaited them, and they felt a magnetic pull, as if the library itself was guiding them forward. The soft, murmuring voice that had accompanied them so far broke the silence once more. "You have touched the memories of the past, but now the time has come for you to face the greatest test. Only by confronting the truth in its purest form can you continue your journey. Follow the path ahead, and you will find what you seek." Emma and Jack exchanged a glance. It was clear that the voice spoke of something important, something both terrifying and necessary. They had faced the past, now it was time to confront the future. The shelves around them began to shift, rearranging themselves like a living maze, the air thick with an unfamiliar energy. The distant echo of pages turning faded, replaced by an odd stillness, a sense that something larger was unfolding. Slowly, a hidden passage revealed itself, bathed in a soft, ethereal light. Without a word, they began to walk toward it. As they entered the passage, the space around them changed. The walls seemed to dissolve, and they were no longer in the library, but standing in a vast, open chamber, the air cool and heavy. The floor was covered in smooth marble, reflecting the light from unseen sources, and in the center of the room stood a tall, ornate mirror. Its frame was carved from silver, adorned with intricate patterns of vines and stars, and it shimmered with an almost magical aura. Emma felt a chill run down her spine as she gazed at the mirror. There was something undeniably powerful about it, something that beckoned to her, urging her to come closer. The mirror of truth. She had heard stories of such mirrors, objects that revealed not just one's reflection, but the very essence of a person's soul. They didn't show what you wanted to see, but what you needed to see. "This is it," Jack said quietly, his voice filled with awe and a hint of fear. "The mirror. It's what we've been searching for." Emma stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. The mirror was vast, standing tall enough to show her entire reflection, but the glass didn't merely reflect her physical appearance. Instead, it shimmered, swirling with colors that seemed to pulse like living things, shifting with the energy of the room. With a deep breath, Emma stood before the mirror. As her reflection began to appear, she braced herself. What would it show her? Would it reveal the truth she sought, or something more? The surface of the mirror rippled, and slowly, the colors began to take shape. At first, she saw herself, the familiar features of her face, the familiar contours of her body. But then the mirror deepened, pulling her further into its depths. Her reflection began to change. It wasn't just her face anymore, it was everything. The mirror revealed her, not as she was, but as she had been, as she could be, and as she feared to become. Her reflection was a mosaic of memories, hopes, and fears, shifting in and out of focus, as if the mirror itself was piecing together the fragmented parts of her soul. Emma saw flashes of the past, moments of joy with her mother, the quiet afternoons spent in their cottage by the sea, the laughter that filled their home. But those moments were soon replaced by darker images, images of sorrow, of loss, and of the choices she had made that had led her to this moment. She saw herself standing at the crossroads, unsure of the path to take, trapped between the past and the future. But the reflection in the mirror was not just her. There was something else, a shadow lurking in the depths of the glass. It was a darker version of herself, a self consumed by fear and doubt, one who had given up, who had abandoned hope. Emma could feel the weight of this reflection pressing down on her, as if the mirror was forcing her to confront the darkest parts of herself. "Who are you?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. The shadow in the mirror didn't answer, but it seemed to watch her, its eyes filled with an unspoken sorrow. Jack, standing beside her, watched in silence, his face unreadable. He knew that the mirror showed not only Emma's truth, but his own, too. He could feel it. He was not exempt from the test. The mirror was a gateway, showing the hearts of those who stood before it, testing their courage to face what lay within. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, trying to steady her breath. She had seen the truth of her past, and now the mirror was showing her the truth of her inner self, the parts of her that she had hidden away, the fears she had never voiced. It was painful, but necessary. She couldn't keep running from the shadows. Taking a deep breath, Emma reached out to touch the mirror. The cold surface met her fingers, sending a shock through her body, but instead of pulling away, she held on, allowing the mirror to show her everything it needed to. The swirling colors grew still, the shadowy reflection slowly receding into the depths, and for a brief moment, Emma saw a clearer image of herself, a woman not defined by fear or loss, but by resilience and hope. The mirror's surface rippled one last time before it cleared, showing her reflection as she was now, strong, determined, and ready to face whatever came next. Emma stepped back, her heart still racing, but she felt a strange sense of peace. The mirror had shown her the truth, not just the pain, but the strength she had gained along the way. It had revealed the depths of her soul, and now she understood that she wasn't bound by her past. She could choose who she wanted to be, moving forward. "We're ready," Emma said quietly, her voice steady. She turned to Jack, who met her gaze with a look of quiet understanding. They had both faced their truths. Now, they could continue their journey. As they turned to leave the chamber, the mirror's voice echoed in their minds, soft but clear. "The truth has been revealed. Now you must move forward, for the journey does not end here. Only by embracing the truth can you fulfill your destiny." With those words, they stepped away from the mirror of truth, knowing that their path was clearer than ever before. Emma and Jack walked away from the mirror of truth, their footsteps echoing through the vast, empty space. The chamber behind them, where they had faced their deepest fears and confronted their innermost truths, was now behind them, but its weight remained in their hearts. The mirror had shown them who they truly were, flawed yet resilient, capable of more than they had believed. Now, they knew they had the strength to face whatever came next. But as they moved through the shifting hallways of the library of memories, a new sense of urgency filled the air. The soft voice that had guided them thus far returned, but this time it held a note of finality, a sense of impending conclusion. "You have unlocked the truths of your past, and now you must face the final challenge," the voice intoned. "Ahead lies the final puzzle. It is the key to your future, to the culmination of everything you have learned and all that you have faced. You must solve it, or you will remain here forever, lost in the echoes of time." Emma and Jack exchanged a glance, the weight of the voice's words settling over them like a heavy fog. They had come so far, but this final trial would be the ultimate test of everything they had endured. They had unlocked memories, faced their fears, and confronted the truth, but now they would have to put it all together. "Do you think we can solve it?" Jack asked, his voice barely a whisper. His confidence was waning, his usual determination faltering under the pressure of the unknown. Emma nodded, her gaze unwavering. "We have to. We've come this far. We've faced the darkness, and we can't stop now." The hallway ahead of them began to twist and turn, the walls pulsing with a strange, rhythmic energy. As they walked, the air grew thicker, almost tangible, and the sound of their footsteps became muffled, as though the very space they were in was alive, testing them. They finally reached a large, circular room at the end of the corridor. In the center of the room, floating just above the ground, was an intricately designed puzzle, a sphere composed of thousands of tiny, shifting pieces. It hovered in midair, rotating slowly, its surface gleaming like stardust. The pieces seemed to pulse with a faint light, each one glowing softly, like stars in the night sky. The room itself was silent, but Emma could feel the tension in the air. This was no ordinary puzzle. It was alive, its pieces constantly shifting, refusing to settle into place. The challenge was not simply in assembling the puzzle, it was understanding its meaning. The sphere seemed to contain the answer to everything, the key to the future, the path forward, and the culmination of all their efforts. But the pieces were constantly changing, slipping away just as she thought she understood them. "This is it," Emma murmured, stepping toward the floating puzzle. The final challenge. Jack stood beside her, watching the sphere carefully. "What do we do? How do we solve it?" Emma took a deep breath. She had faced countless challenges on this journey, each one more difficult than the last, but this felt different. It wasn't just about solving a puzzle, it was about understanding the very nature of the journey they had undertaken. As she reached out to touch one of the shifting pieces, a wave of energy surged through her hand. The piece glowed brightly before shifting back into place. Emma quickly pulled her hand away, but a strange, familiar sensation lingered, like a distant memory, just out of reach. She closed her eyes, focusing on the feeling, and slowly, the pieces of the puzzle began to make sense. "This puzzle, it's not about completing it," Emma said softly, almost to herself. "It's about understanding the journey. Each piece represents a part of our path, the memories, the choices, the lessons learned. The pieces are constantly shifting because the journey is never truly complete. We're always growing, always changing." Jack stepped forward, his face lighting up with understanding. "So, we don't have to solve it all at once. We just need to accept that the puzzle is always evolving. It's about being open to what comes next." Emma nodded, a sense of clarity washing over her. "Exactly. The puzzle is a reflection of us, the choices we make, the people we meet, the lessons we learn. We can't force it into a perfect shape because the journey is never perfect. It's about embracing the unknown and letting it shape us." With a deep breath, Emma reached out once again, this time touching the entire sphere. The pieces shimmered and glowed, moving together in a pattern, not to form a completed image, but to create an intricate, shifting design. The puzzle had not been about solving it in the traditional sense, it had been about understanding that the path forward was fluid, ever-changing, and shaped by everything they had experienced. As the puzzle stabilized, the light from the pieces grew brighter, and the entire room seemed to shift, as though the very space around them was rearranging itself. The sphere began to dissolve, its pieces scattering into the air like stardust, leaving only a single, radiant crystal hovering before them. The crystal glowed with an intense light, and in its depths, Emma could see something, a vision of their future, of the journey yet to come. It was a glimpse, not of a specific path, but of the choices they would make, the people they would become. It was a vision of hope, of endless possibilities, of a future that was not determined by the past, but shaped by the present moment. "The puzzle is complete," the voice said, its tone filled with finality. "You have understood the nature of the journey. Now, the path forward is yours to choose." Emma and Jack stood in silence, the crystal floating between them, its light filling the room with warmth and peace. They had completed the final trial, not by solving a riddle, but by understanding the essence of their journey. The pieces of the puzzle had always been there, waiting to fall into place, not in a single moment, but over time. With the crystal in hand, they knew the next step was clear. Their future was not written in stone, but created by the choices they made. The journey was theirs to continue, shaped by everything they had learned along the way. And with that, they stepped forward into the unknown, ready to embrace the future, whatever it might hold. The crystal in Emma's hand pulsed softly, its light warm and steady. The room, now bathed in the ethereal glow, seemed to hum with life. For the first time since their journey had begun, Emma and Jack felt an overwhelming sense of peace, a stillness that spoke of completion, yet promised more. The final puzzle had been solved, but it wasn't just the puzzle that had changed them, it was everything they had learned along the way. The walls of the room began to shift, their edges fading into the horizon, and the space around them opened up, revealing the world beyond. The air, once thick with tension, now felt light, as if all the heaviness of their trials had lifted. Slowly, the landscape outside came into view, a vast, rolling meadow, bathed in the soft light of the early morning. The sky was streaked with hues of pink and gold, the first light of dawn brushing against the horizon like a gentle promise. The stars were fading, their time over, as the sun began to rise. Emma and Jack stepped forward, the crystal still glowing between them, its light now blending with the warmth of the new day. They could feel the ground beneath their feet, solid and real, as though they were no longer in a world of shifting possibilities, but standing on the threshold of something new. The air smelled fresh, alive with the scent of grass and flowers, and the sound of birds chirping in the distance brought a smile to Emma's face. This was it, the end of their journey, the beginning of something else. "It's beautiful," Jack whispered, his eyes wide as he took in the scene. He had seen so many strange and wondrous things during their travels, but nothing compared to the peace and simplicity of this moment. They had faced darkness, danger, and doubt, but now they were standing at the edge of a new world, a world that was theirs to explore. Emma nodded, her heart swelling with a quiet sense of fulfillment. "It is. And it's ours. We've done it. We've made it this far." The crystal pulsed again, and in that instant, the world around them seemed to shimmer, as if reality itself was bending and reshaping. In the distance, they could see the outline of a path winding through the meadow, leading toward a distant hill. There, at the top of the hill, was a small figure, a silhouette against the rising sun. Without a word, They began to walk toward the hill, the crystal's light now dimming, as though its purpose had been fulfilled. The closer they got to the hill, the clearer the figure became. It was a woman, her features soft yet familiar, her presence radiating warmth and love. As they reached the top of the hill, the woman turned to face them, and Emma's breath caught in her throat. It was her mother. "Mom," Emma's voice faltered, her heart racing. She hadn't seen her mother in years, not since the day she had lost her. But here she was, standing before her, bathed in the light of the dawn. Her mother smiled, her eyes filled with the same gentle warmth Emma had remembered from her childhood. "You've made it, my dear," she said, her voice a soft whisper in the morning breeze. "You've completed the journey." Emma's eyes filled with tears as she stepped forward, her heart aching with a mixture of joy and sorrow. I don't understand. How is this possible?" Her mother reached out, cupping Emma's face in her hands, the touch so real, so comforting, that Emma felt as though nothing in the world could harm her. "You've always carried me with you, in your heart. In your choices, in your love, in your strength. I never truly left you. And now, you are ready to continue the journey, to live the life that's waiting for you." Jack stepped back, giving them space, his eyes filled with understanding. He had seen Emma's pain, the weight of her loss, and now he saw the release, the healing that had come from facing the past, from understanding the truth. "But what now?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. "What's next? I feel like there's still so much ahead of us." Her mother's smile deepened, and she gestured toward the horizon. "The world is vast, and your journey is never truly over. There will always be new paths to walk, new lessons to learn, and new horizons to explore. But now, you understand that the journey is yours to shape. The future is not something that happens to you, it's something you create. And you are ready." Emma nodded, the weight of her mother's words settling deep in her soul. She had spent so much of her life searching for answers, trying to find meaning in the chaos. But now she understood, meaning wasn't something to be found, it was something to be created. The pieces of the puzzle had always been there, waiting for her to put them together. And she had done it. The woman before her, her mother, began to fade, her form dissolving into the light of the dawn. But Emma felt no sadness. Instead, she felt a deep sense of gratitude, a sense of peace, knowing that her mother's love would always be with her, guiding her through every step of her journey. "Remember, my love," her mother's voice echoed softly, "you are never alone." As the last traces of her mother's presence faded, Emma turned to Jack, her heart full of both sadness and hope. She had faced her past, understood the truths that had shaped her, and now the future was waiting. Together, they stood on the hill, watching the sun rise higher into the sky. The world was still, but alive with promise. They had completed their journey, but this was only the beginning of the next chapter. With the light of dawn casting a golden glow over the world, they stepped forward into the future, hand in hand, ready to face whatever awaited them, knowing that they had the power to shape it with the strength of their love, their courage, and the wisdom of their journey. And as they walked, the first light of day wrapped around them like a gentle embrace, a new beginning, full of endless possibilities.